I was waiting for her to announce that. Well, anyway, everybody, welcome. Good morning, and welcome to the University of Pittsburgh School of Law's virtual open house. For those of you who haven't met me yet, my name is Charmaine McCall, and I'm the Assistant Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid here at Pitt Law. And we're all so very excited to connect with you here today. I know we've all been using Zoom for quite some time now, but I am going to ask for your patience today. Many of you aren't here in the Pittsburgh area, but anyone who is in the Pittsburgh area, we are experiencing very high winds, of course, because it's open house. So I just want to ask for your patience. If any of us should lose power or be disconnected from Zoom, just hang in there. If you yourself are kicked out of Zoom, please come back. We will leave this link open. There's no password, so you can come in and out all day long. So again, thank you for your patience as we deal with windy weather and technology these days. It's great though. One thing about our virtual open house, it's great because we are able to have so many of you here, not from, say, the Pittsburgh or even close by area. In fact, we have students on today from Alabama, California, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, Maryland, Maine, Vermont. I even have a couple students that are not even in the country. I have students that are logging in from Belgium and from Italy. So that is one very exciting thing and we appreciate that about Zoom, is that we can all connect no matter where we are. And so certainly I hope that you are healthy and safe no matter where you are. And hopefully we'll be able to meet here in Pittsburgh later this summer. We're super hopeful about that. Our goal, though, today is to share with you all of the wonderful people that are behind our great Pitt Law community, and certainly to answer any and all questions that you may have about Pitt Law. You're going to meet faculty here today who have testified in front of U.S. Congress. You're going to meet alumni who are partners at law firms and judges all over the world. We're going to introduce you to some of our current students who meet reality head on in our legal clinics and live and breathe Pitt Law every day. And speaking of livable, we have to talk about our exciting city of Pittsburgh. Our city of Pittsburgh has earned America's most livable city many times, and it is a top world destination. So we're super excited for you to visit us and hopefully join us here in Pittsburgh. Google, Uber, IBM, Microsoft, Facebook, Apple, those are among some of the over 1,600 technology firms that generate $200 billion here in annual Pittsburgh payrolls. Our area has served for the longtime federal agency headquarters for cyber defense, for software engineering, robotics, energy research, and the nuclear navy. Pittsburgh has recently been deemed the food city of the year too, so we're super excited about that. We also house the nation's 8th largest bank, PNC. We have 8 Fortune 500 companies right here in the city of Pittsburgh. 6 of the top 300 US law firms make their global headquarters here in the Pittsburgh area, while Rand Corporation, BNY Mellon, Nova, FedEx have regional bases here that have helped Pittsburgh become the 6th best area for US job growth. So that's super exciting for us all. We certainly, again, hope that you can visit us later and, take in our great city. But in the meantime, we have packed a full day, lots of information for you here today at our virtual open house. We hope you can stay the whole time. But as I mentioned earlier, you're more than welcome to jump in and out, as your schedule permits. I also just want to take a minute to introduce some of our Pitt Law staff who will be with us throughout the day. And really without them, I would not have been able to make this virtual house such a success. So I want to introduce to you our fantastic Director of IT, Kim Getz. She'll be here helping all day, hopefully. Hi, Kim. We also have Lori McMaster, our Executive Director of External Relations. She'll also be helping us later this morning in moderating our alumni panel. Deb Hilton in our communications and marketing staff. And of course, our brilliant Director of Financial Aid, Mimi Jeffries, you'll see her a little bit later too. And the best Dean of Students that any law school can have, Allie Linsenmeyer. So that's some of our staff that you'll see kind of popping in and out throughout the day. And again, thank you so much for all of your hard work too. I really appreciate it. Certainly by the end of the day, we hope we've answered all of your questions. So now I'm going to ask you to sit back and enjoy our virtual open house. I have the pleasure to introduce to you our Dean of Pitt Law, Dean Amy Wildermuth. Dean Wildermuth joined Pitt Law in July of 2018. She joins us from the University of Utah, where she was a professor of law in the S.J. Quinney College of Law and Associate Vice President for Faculty and Academic Affairs at the university. She was also the University of Utah's first Chief Sustainability Officer. Dean Wildermuth earned both a Juris Doctorate and a Master of Science in Environmental Engineering from the University of Illinois. She earned a BS in Engineering and Policy and a BA in History at Washington University. Before joining the law faculty at the University of Utah, she served as a law clerk to Justice John Paul Stevens of the Supreme Court of the United States. So please help me welcome Dean Amy Wildermuth.
I forgot that I had to unmute. How about that? Hey, thank you so much, Shar. I am delighted to be with all of you today. And so before we start our mock class, I'm just going to say a couple of things about Pitt Law and what I think you should be looking for today as you go through the day. So in my mind, what stands out here at Pitt Law, in addition to all of the great things happening in Pittsburgh that Shar mentioned, and all of the terrific opportunities that we offer our students here at the law school, I'm going to talk about one really important factor in all of this. It's the people. You're going to meet people today that will guide you, shape your experience, and help you, not just in law school, but throughout your professional career. What we have here at Pitt Law is special. We have people who genuinely care about you and your journey. And so what do I mean by this? Let's start with our alums. Our alums are just down the road. I'm standing in the law school right now. Now, I have closed all the doors, just for some of you who are worried about this. I closed all the doors and I don't have anybody else in here. That's the only reason I don't have a mask on. Normally, I teach with a mask. But I'm coming to you from our law school. Here in the Alcoa room, it's actually a beautiful day despite the wind, right? And this is only minutes away from the downtown area where we have so many of those great alums. And they come and do things here at the law school with you. In fact, they are a big part of our teaching enterprise, our extern enterprise, and quite frankly, our mentorship. And so without that community, we wouldn't be able to offer all the things that we offer. But here, you are warmly welcomed and warmly embraced from day one. What else do we have? The great staff that Shar mentioned and the great faculty that you're going to meet. Ask questions. Find out what you can learn about that faculty and about what you're going to expect in our classrooms. And finally, the last thing is all of you, all the students who are here. We have very carefully thought about the folks that come into our law school and how we can be part of that journey for you to be successful. We know all of you have what it takes to be successful at this law school, and we are here to help you. And all of you are going to help one another. What we're going to do here is build a community, build a diverse, build a very excellent and well-trained group of folks to go out there, and I'm going to say it, and change the world. Make our society a more fair and more just one. And so how do we do that? Well, I'm going to start today with a mock class that's going to show you what it's like to be in my class in the first year. Now, the class I'm going to teach today is one that I just taught in my civil procedure class. So what's civil procedure? Civil procedure is about the rules that we follow when we're in federal court on civil cases. Now, a lot of times you think about the law, you think about shows that involve criminal law, like Law and Order. We're going to do the other side. We're going to do civil cases, and we're going to talk today about the rules of those civil cases getting into federal court. Now, what's a civil case? So let's say you have a car accident, and for some reason, right, the insurance companies don't agree. We have to go to court. That's a case that we would have fall under the civil part of the docket. What other kinds of cases? Let's say there's a contract between two businesses and somebody doesn't live up to what they promised in the contract. That's another kind of case that we might see on the civil side of the docket. All right, so with that introduction, I'm now going to move on to the lesson. So is everybody ready? Let me make sure. Now I'm going to ask him to stop spotlighting me because I need to be able to see the gallery. So I'm going to walk over just for a second, and I'm going to make sure that I can see the gallery. I think now, Shars, we got to get everybody off of spotlighting so I can see everybody. I don't know if we're having trouble because I still have just Shar on my screen. Just hold on just for a second, everybody. Let's see if we can get it unpinned to Shar.
Change to gallery view, and that should.
Oh, okay. It's just on this machine. Thank you. Okay, now I got it. All right, now we're ready to go. Okay, so when you're ready to be called on, you can wave in your square, or you can use the raise hand function, and I'll call on you. And the way we'll do it, right, is I'll ask questions, and if you want to answer the question, you can answer it. I'm hoping some of you will want to participate. And if I don't get any participants, should I do what we usually do in law school? What do we usually do in law school? Do you guys know? Now let's see if anybody raises their hand and tells me what we usually do. Go ahead. I think I got Matt's hand up. Matt.
Cold calling.
There we go. So in law school, a lot of times what happens is if nobody's answering, I just shout out a name and somebody's got to answer. Okay, so is everybody ready for this experience? You ready for this fun ride? Anybody have any questions before we get started? I see I got one question from Cindy. Do you still have your hand up to ask me a question? You're okay? Okay. All right. You guys ready? I'm ready. And again, this is going to be a typical kind of, in fact, if you get me for Civ Pro next year, you will have this lesson down. You'll say, I already did this one. That's what we're going to do. All right. So here we go. I'm going to start out. Okay. So for today, what we're doing in the lesson, right, is about pleading. So when we start a case, when we start litigation, how do we kick things off? That's our question for today. How are we going to get it started? Well, the first thing we got to start with is that our Constitution gives us some instruction on this. And that's found in both the Fifth Amendment and the 14th Amendment. And it's found in something called the Due Process Clause. Okay, so how many people have heard of our Due Process Clause? How many people have heard of the Due Process Clause? Just quick show of hands, I won't call on you. All right, see that? Everybody's ready to give me a hand if I say I'm not going to call on you, right? Okay. Now, when we talk about the Due Process Clause, there's two different parts we learn to this clause. Now, it's not easy. If you read the Constitution, it looks like there's just the same language to the Due Process Clause. But it turns out in procedural law, in civil procedure in particular, we really like the procedural Due Process Clause. What we call, it's the same language, but it's what are the things that are required of us from a procedural standpoint. Okay. And this is where I now provide you with excellent relationship advice. Okay, so one, if we have a problem, the first thing we have to do is provide notice. Provide notice. That's what the Constitution says. Due process means we got to say if we've got a beef with someone, right? Okay. 2, we have to give the other side an opportunity to respond. Okay. So we have to say, I'm mad at you. Here's why. And then the other side says, well, here's my response. Okay? And then what? We have to have what we call a neutral arbiter to decide, or a neutral decision maker. So what do I mean by neutral? What do you think that means? Anybody want to give me, raise a hand? What do you think neutral means in this context? All right, Elizabeth.
Unconnected to the two parties involved.
Unconnected to the two parties involved. Very good, right? So no financial stake, no family stake, no reason to think that they would be biased, right? So no bias. That's what we're looking for. Nothing that would make you decide this on a ground that we would consider not going to the merits. Okay. So we're starting out at the very beginning of our litigation. And if we start out at that very beginning point, that means we're at this first step, notice. Now, everything that we do is shaped by the other things that come after it, right? Okay, so we've got to provide notice, but how much notice? What kind of notice? And how do we figure that out? We got to figure out, okay, it's got to be enough that folks have an opportunity to respond to it thoughtfully, carefully, right? And it's got to be enough that our neutral arbiter has an idea of what's going on. Okay. So what are we essentially doing? The reading says we're setting out a story. We're telling, at least the plaintiff is telling, their side of the case. So that's what the first piece of this is. The notice that we're providing is for the plaintiff to tell their story. I told you, I was giving you relationship advice. Why did I say that? Because a lot of times when we have problems, we don't clearly articulate what that problem is and provide that information to the party that we're upset with. The legal system is going to do that, and we're going to do that in a very thoughtful, careful way. So that's what you're looking at. Okay, now was it always like this? Okay, who wants to give me this sort of run of whether this was always how we did things? What did it look like back in what I like to call ye olde days in England? Anybody want to give me sort of a rundown or a summary of what that looked like? Who's got a hand up? Let me see. Who's got a hand up? Oh. All right. I see. Jamie, you're going to get it. Jamie.
So in old times, depending on somebody's like class and where in society they stood, if they accused you of something, you didn't really get a chance to respond if you were of lower society or lower class because it was their word against yours.
Okay. So we have what we would say is a highly formalized, very exclusive sort of system. Was that pretty fair, Jamie? Like, we're not letting everybody in, and it looks like you have to say some pretty unusual kinds of things, at least unusual to us today, to make it into the door, right? And it's true that even up through the 18th, even 19th century, we see this in how lawyers and the legal system operated. There was a certain formalistic, say the special words kind of approach to pleading. And as Jamie's already pointed out, like that left a lot of people behind. You know what else it was? very protectionist for lawyers. It meant that you would have to get a lawyer in order to know what was going on and to put the comma in the right place and say the right words, right? That's what the system used to look like. And then in the 30s, we had a big revolution. I mean, it started in sort of the late 1800s, I should be fair, but we definitely see it in the federal courts in the 1930s. And at that moment, there is a reckoning with how lawyers and the legal system had approached these cases. And the idea is we got to do a better job of allowing folks to come into this system. So the rules of pleading are completely rewritten. We have a whole new approach. And that whole new approach, and I know some of you are going to say, really? Right? But that whole new approach was dependent on us using ordinary language and being understandable. Okay, so let's see how understandable we got. So you have an example complaint in the reading for today. An example complaint. We can turn to that example complaint. And if anybody wants me to pull it up and share the screen, I can do that. But I think Shar has given you a link to it as well. So you can pull up that complaint. Okay, so somebody tell me, what's the very first thing we see at the top of the complaint? What's at the top of that Haddle versus Garrison complaint? Who can tell me what's at the top? This one's not too hard. Go ahead. You're not gonna, I know you can do this one. Look at that complaint. What's at the very top? Just read the words. What does it look like? All right, Elizabeth, give it to me.
In the United States District Court for the Southern District of Georgia.
Okay, so what is that? What is that part at the very top? On my list of 3, what was that indicating?
Well, it indicates venue, but
It's venue and also who's going to be our neutral arbiter, right? This is the court that we're taking things to. So venue, very fancy word, A+ for Elizabeth. That is, right, how we think about where we take stuff. We use fancy words like venue. Maybe it's not so. I really didn't know venue until I got to law school. Sorry. So, venue is the location, but this is also, we are designating this is the entity that's going to serve as the arbiter for this particular case. Okay, so we've identified the court. What else do we identify on there? We've got the court, and what comes next? What's next in that list? All right, I see Cindy's got her hand up, and then I'll come to you, Rob. Cindy.
The plaintiff and the defendant's names.
Okay, so we've got a very, and this is where it looks like a form, right? But we have a very particular way that we identify the parties. So we've got the court and we've got the parties. Really important, right? If we're going to tell a story, you got to say who's involved. Who, what, when, where, how. We'll come back to it. Okay. Then we have some information that says there's a case number that's going to be assigned. That's just for record keeping, right, in the courthouse. And then what does it say? What's the next thing? Rob, do you want to give me, what is the next thing you see on that complaint?
It provides the details of the complaint and why it's being issued.
Good, right? Now we're going to walk through and it's going to say this is a complaint. So it's going to identify what this document is. And it's going to tell you a story. And it's telling you a story of a fight, right? Of a problem. Okay. Who wants to give me just the short version of what happened between these parties? All right. I see Jack has his hand up. I'm going to go to Jack. Jack, what happened between these parties?
Yeah, so plaintiff alleges that the defendants, so the party of the defendants, were being put on a trial for, I think it was like corruption or something, and he was subpoenaed by the federal courts. So in response to that, the defendants terminated his contract, which was an at-will contract. So he's alleging that under a certain Georgia code, under conspiracy, that he shouldn't have been terminated from a job. So he's seeking punitive damages for that reason.
Jack, that's a great summary. Okay, so nice and tight, nice and concise, right? We have an individual, I'm going to call him a whistleblower, and he works at a company that's engaged in, some not great things. Turns out it's a healthcare company, right? But it's a company that's doing things that appear to be violating criminal law. Remember, I said I was sticking to civil law, criminal law, right? Much higher stakes. And he said, now it's not clear, and you get a little note about this, like it's not clear from the pleading, like did he actually testify or he was going to testify, but he was definitely providing information to the authorities that was being used, right? That's the idea, being used in this case against this company. And as a result, I know you're all shocked to learn he was let go. I mean, can you believe this? I know, shocking. I know you all have been around the block. You know these things happen. Okay, so the big story here is that he was going, right, to do the thing that we want people to do when there are criminal kinds of allegations on the table or wrongdoing. We want people to come forward. And to protect them, as Jack explained, we have something called Section 1985. Many of you might have heard of 1983. We're going to do that one. Well, I'll talk about that in a second. But this is 1985. It's actually passed in that same package with 1983. And this was to protect folks who came forward and said there is wrongdoing and we want the authorities to do something about it. Okay, so that's what the story is that we're hearing in that complaint. Now, the way we just said it feels a little bit more digestible. Why not write a complaint in the way that we just talked about it? Why not use, sort of your standard form of paragraphs and, nice essay form? How many of you were struck by how the complaint, did it seem awkward or odd to anyone? You can just raise your hand if it felt awkward or odd. I thought it was at first, right? Okay. So let's think about why we might have written it this way. So you'll notice a really important thing in this complaint. We number different kinds of ideas. We actually call them separate paragraphs. In the way you talk about English composition, these are not paragraphs as we traditionally understand them, but we call them separate paragraphs as a way to identify them. And the idea is that in each of those separate paragraphs, we're putting forth just one idea. And why do we do it in that numbered format? Remember the second part of procedural due process. We have to allow the defendant to respond. And one of the ways that we think we do this more effectively and more efficiently is if we number each of these things, put basically single ideas in those paragraphs, and then when a defendant goes to respond, instead of responding to the story as we just laid it out, the defendant's going to respond to each and every paragraph. And it's going to say, yes, that's true. No, it's not true. I'm not sure if that's true. That's in general what it looks like. And so it looks a little funny when you're reading it the first time through, but understand the reason we do it this way is so, getting back to that second point, our defendant can effectively respond. Okay, so is everybody okay so far? Towards the end of that complaint, you'll also see that we're going to have some requirements in terms of saying like what you want. Like what is the relief you're seeking? You want money? You want your job back? All of those things. That's what you're going to see in that relief provision, which is at the very end of that complaint. And then we have a requirement that we sign the document. Now, why would we have lawyers sign the document? You have to put all your information in there, so we have to make sure that we tell, if you want to have anything to do with this case, I'm representing, so you got to have a reason and know how to contact me. But why would we say, now lawyer, you have to sign that complaint? What do you think? Why do we do that? Why would we do that old fashioned kind of thing where we have people sign? Go ahead, Rebecca, give me a reason.
To make sure that they have actually received the complaint in order to potentially respond to it.
Good. So you're answering, that is a very good point, right? For the defendant, we definitely want to make sure that they got notice and that they know about this. There's like a whole bunch of stuff, a bunch of days I spend on that question. Very, very good. But what about plaintiff's lawyer? Why would we make plaintiff's lawyer sign it? Why would we make why do you sign anything? Do you guys sign stuff anymore?
To make sure.
Go ahead, Rebecca, go ahead.
Just to make sure that it's not like someone pretending to be that person or like trying to verify the identity.
I mean, that might be one reason, right? We know of a lot of things where we try to sign so that we know it's really you. But what else? Cindy, what do you got?
I guess like to make sure that someone's being held liable and that everything that's being stated is truthful and not false.
Cindy's got it. As lawyers, when we walk into a room and we assert claims against another party, it is our obligation to ensure that we've done a reasonable investigation of the facts, that the law supports what we're going to do, and that we're not doing this to harass or terrorize, right, somebody else, right? We're not permitted to use the legal process for inappropriate reasons, and we got to have facts and law on our side. And when you sign that document, you are verifying that that is what is required. Now Sophia's got a question. What do you want to ask me?
Yeah, this might be a side note, but what are the consequences to if at the end of a case or a trial, it's proven that the plaintiff was, lying for the most part, or that they just didn't have any evidence to back up their claims?
Really good question. So there's a fine line here, right? Because what if a plaintiff just loses their case? Like it turns out they thought that the accident was the fault of someone else, and it turns out it wasn't. It was their fault. These things happen all the time, right? If we have situations where somebody loses just on the facts, right, because it didn't line up for them, that doesn't necessarily cause us a problem. It's where I think you started to shade with your question. If we have a situation where somebody is lying, somebody is misrepresenting, right, that's going to cause us a different kind of problem. And here's the really important thing. We as lawyers take an oath that we're going to do our job the way we're supposed to do our job, right? Which is to say, we're not just going to rely on our client saying, this is what happened, because it turns out that's not enough. We have to do, as I said, a reasonable factual investigation. We have a responsibility. Now, if it turns out there's some wild scam, right, that you had no reason to know what's going on, as soon as you know what's going on, you got to immediately say, hey, right, this is not okay. And then, consequences will follow from people misrepresenting to a federal court. In general, then that goes back over to that criminal side. But we as lawyers can get sanctioned, money sanctions, other kinds of sanctions, right? If we take cases that we didn't do a good enough job of investigating, or we get the law wildly wrong. Now, that's going to lead into the sort of substance of why we read this case today. So let me make sure everybody's still with me. I'm going to just check, make sure I don't have any hands up. Okay. So now we've got our complaint, and you guys see the first step in what happens. What's the motion that gets filed by the defendant here? What's the name of that motion? Who wants to give me the name of that motion? Let me see who's got a hand up. Cindy, go ahead. Give us the name of the motion.
Demurrer or Rule 12b-6.
Good. What we used to call a demurrer. but now we use 12b6 because there is a rule book. There are rules, and that rule book says we call that a 12b6 now. Now, what is that motion? What is that motion? I'm gonna have Alex tell me what that motion is.
Hi, yeah. As far from what I read, 12b6 is basically just it attacks the legal sufficiency of the complaint.
Good. So what we do is we assume everything you said in your complaint is true. Now we just do it for the purposes of this motion. We don't do it for the rest of the case. We just do it for the purposes of this motion. And we say, everything you've said is true. So what does that mean for our Haddle v. Garrison complaint? It means that we assume that in fact, this individual was a whistleblower. The plaintiff went forward, helped the authorities, and on that basis, as he alleges, he was fired from his job. And the other side says, well, assume all that's true. We reserve the right later to say, we don't think it's true, but we're going to assume all that's true. Said, you do not have a claim under Section 1985. You cannot bring this claim, plaintiff. Okay? Why can't they bring the claim? Okay, let me call him Ben. Ben hasn't had a shot. Ben, tell me why not.
Because Georgia's an at-will employment state, so they can terminate him without reasoning.
Okay, so let's just talk just for a second. You guys are pretty sophisticated. I can already tell. You're one of our smartest groups that's ever come in. So I know you guys all know this, but let's just pretend for a second we don't fully understand it at-will and what else. Okay, so what's the alternative to an at-will employment? I'm going to give me as the example. I'm a tenured law professor at a state-related university. That means that I have certain protections before I can be fired. What are some other examples of things where we have those kinds of protections? Anybody want to jump in? Okay, Matt, give me one.
Civil service employees.
Good. Civil service employees, right? There are certain protections for people before they can be. Now, it doesn't mean you can't be fired. It just means we have some protections. We have to go through some steps before we can fire someone. All right. Now, even with at-will employment, and I know this is like a leap here, but even with at-will employment, we still cannot fire someone on a basis that we think is discriminatory. So even if I was working at a law firm, which by the way, most of those are at will, or I'm working at this healthcare company, if they were to come in and say, we are firing you because you are a woman, that would be prohibited. So even for at-will employment, I want everybody to understand for some of those discriminatory kinds of reasons, we still can't do that. That is not okay. But other than that, if today somebody came in, I was working at the healthcare place, right? And they said, well, that gray stripy suit that you put on today, it's got some stripes. Okay. They said, we really don't like that. You're done. What can I do? Nothing. And here I thought I wore the good gray suit. Okay. So you see, right? So there are some prohibited reasons. We cannot fire people on those bases, even in at-will employment. But the difference between at-will employment and the kinds of protections we were talking about other folks having, in the at-will employment, they could just come in and say, yeah, you're done today. The suit, anything, right? Okay. All right. So they say, hey, you're an at-will employee, so you don't have grounds for complaining under 1985. Now, let's be a little more precise. What's the language in 1985 that we're focused on? What's the language of 1985 that we're focused on? Matt, give me the language.
Specifically talks about intimidation and reprisals for appearing in court.
It talks about that, right? And it also says you have to be damaged in something. How do you have to be damaged? Does anybody remember?
Person or property.
Okay, so damaged in their person or property. Okay, so how would we be injured in our person, by the way? How would we do that? Okay, Rob, give it to me.
Would it be some sort of defamation?
It
or
could be.
slander?
I was going a little more physically aggressive.
To be physically injured?
Yeah, right? Like what if they just like they had a little crew that came and beat you up? That would probably work. You're thinking that can't possibly happen. Oh, come on. You all read American history. You know I have a history degree. Come on. This happens. It happens maybe with a little less frequency today, possibly, right? But this happens, and it especially happened when they passed this. So when they were saying like, hey, we're going to come after you, right? That's what we're talking about that. Wow. Hey, these are rough waters. We're going to be lawyers. All right, you guys ready? Okay, so it's not person. They didn't do that. They didn't rough them up. So they're saying it's property. And the property interest that our plaintiff is asserting is that job he lost. And they say, wait a second, you don't have a property interest. Amy has a property interest, the equivalent of a property interest, right, in her job because she has that tenure protection at a state-related, right, university. Okay, so there's certain protections that she gets. Civil servants have certain protections. Union folks have certain protections, right? That amounts to, in our world, something closer to a property interest. Now, you're probably thinking, like, what else do I have a property interest in? You have a property interest in if you have purchased a home, that home. I'm going to guess a lot of you haven't done that yet, right? So that's what we call real property. Then there's like personal property, which I know you have lots of, right? You have your phone, I have books, you have a computer, right? All of those things. You have property interest in them. Okay. And the assertion here by the defendant says, hey, all you had was at-will employment, which does not equal a property interest. Okay. So we get that opinion from the district court, and then the case moves on. The opinion from the district court dismisses plaintiff's case. Says there's no law, right? Because you have that at-will, you're not supported by the law here. All right, so now what do we do? Plaintiff's not happy. Where does plaintiff's counsel now turn? Where do we move to? What's the next step? All right, I'm gonna make sure I get somebody does anybody new want to answer? I think we got, I saw Jack real quick. Okay, Jack, go ahead.
Yes, they go to the Court of Appeals to get a secondary ruling.
Okay, so anybody remember the name of that one? The name of that Court of Appeals? It's a number. Okay, I'm going to have Matt. I saw Matt. Matt, give me the number.
I didn't remember the number. I just remember it was the circuit. I can't remember if it was the 11th or 9th. One of the two.
It's the 11th. Here's what I'm going to tell you. 9th is on the other side of the country. The 11th is over on this side of the country. Turns out our federal courts are all organized geographically. There's one exception to that. It probably shouldn't exist, but that's just my editorial comment. But most of them are existing in geographic regions. And in this particular instance, because we are in Georgia, we're going to the 11th Circuit. The 11th Circuit. So it gets to the 11th Circuit, and it's kind of a short opinion, right? In fact, it's got a really strange label on it that says unpublished. So let me translate that for you. It meant that the 11th Circuit just thought this was like settled law and they really didn't need to pay attention to it. And they're like, we already said this, you can't bring these. Okay, so let me go back to the point I made before. If you're the lawyer for our plaintiff here, and the law in the 11th Circuit says at-will employment doesn't equal property, and so you can't bring a 1985 suit, Did the lawyer here make a mistake? Did the lawyer here violate a duty that they have by bringing a case where it clearly was already decided law in the 11th Circuit? What's your response to that? Because we got that Supreme Court case coming. That's your hint. What did the Supreme, Lauren, I want you to weigh in. Lauren.
So they brought it there because they thought that the precedent in question either needed like revised or completely remanded by the Supreme Court.
Very good. It was going to be what they say, right, is a non-frivolous argument for a change in the law. And this is hard, right? We say you can't get the law wrong, but we also, in our system, every day, change the law. In fact, when you all are in law school, one of the important things I want you to think about every day is what are the things that we need to change in the law and how are you going to accomplish that? So I got the great fortune of working at the U.S. Supreme Court, as Shar mentioned. When I was there, the very great Justice Ginsburg was a member of the court. Now, all of you know from the many movies that have been made now about Justice Ginsburg, how she moved the needle in litigation, right? On how we change and shape the law going forward. That's a great example of what we're seeing before our eyes. We have settled law, but it turns out, as you read that Supreme Court opinion, you find out that other courts, other circuits had come out differently on the question. And so that meant we had what we call a circuit conflict. The law was not settled. It was, in fact, in conflict between these different courts. And so the lawyers said, we have a non-frivolous argument for changing the law, And they become one of the very few cases that gets granted at the Supreme Court. Now, just for fun, for Supreme Court trivia, how many cases do you think get heard by the Supreme Court every year? How many would you guess? You can just guess. I'm going to ask Marissa.
I think 80.
Okay, it used to be 80. That was in the good old days. It's now closer to like 60, 65. You know how many petitions they get so the Supreme Court is a discretionary docket for the most part. And even when they say it's mandatory, they turn it into discretionary. I can tell you more about that, but it just means like mostly they get to choose what they hear. Mostly. How many petitions to hear cases do you think they get? Thousands. 7,500, 8,000 petitions to be heard. 60, possibly 70 are getting heard. It's nice to be a Supreme Court justice. Woo! That's a good job, right? They hear cases Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They just hear 2 on each of those days, everyone, because they only work the morning. And it's only 2 weeks each month. And by the way, it's only going to be for about 6 months. Again, it's a nice gig, right? So why are they only hearing so few cases? Well, I got a lot of ideas about why they hear so few cases. But when Justice Stevens, just as a comparison point, when Justice Stevens was elevated by President Ford to the Supreme Court, at that time, they were hearing something like 150, 140 cases a year. And it's been narrowed and it's fewer and fewer cases. Now, not surprisingly, they're writing longer opinions. So the number of pages in opinions has not gone down. It's gone up. And in fact, they're producing about the same number, right? With fewer cases. All right. So there's a lot of complications here. All right. Let's get back to the case. Okay. So we go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court grants the case because they say this is a conflict and we got to resolve it. We got to have one of the most important things the Supreme Court does is promote uniformity. You think the Supreme Court is there to solve sort of social or political hot issues. No, they really are trying to resolve these conflicts. They're trying to make the law more uniform, okay? It's just the news tends to report the more interesting ones, shall we say, from a public standpoint. All right. So this one goes to the Supreme Court, and we get that very liberal justice writing the opinion, right? Who's the justice who writes the opinion in this one? Who writes the opinion? Matt.
Justice Rehnquist.
Justice Rehnquist was a Chief Justice for a long time. Now, Matt, do you associate him with the liberal side of the court?
It's been a while. I don't have an association with him.
Okay, so I'm going to give you, because I'm an old person, I know that he was not considered part of the liberal side of the court. Okay, so some of you might have expected if I were to say to you, oh, this is a justice that we usually think of as a conservative. How do you think this is usually going to play out? So let's think about that so what does Justice Rehnquist decide in this particular case? So we've got this language. Is it property or is it not property? How is he going to come out on the question of at-will employment? Let's first talk about his analysis. What does he say is important for us to understand in this case? Where does he start from? What's the biggest thing he's going to point to in getting to his conclusion? Ben, give it to me.
I'm unmuted. There we go. It's essentially that the two people who were, or the person who's removed from the company was conspiring with the new CEO to remove Haddle from his position. So it was outside interference, as he put it.
Right. Okay. So we've got that factual stuff because remember, we're not going to contest the facts right now. So Haddle said this is what happened. That's what we got. So we're taking that for what it's worth. Now what we have to do is figure out, does at-will employment equal property? Now, maybe it's easier if we do it this way. Is it going to equal property? Just nod your head. You can nod your head. The answer is yes, right? Rehnquist is going to tell us this equals property. But why? It's not what the 11th Circuit thought. How do we get there? How do we understand this? This is the meat of the case. So we can understand that result. But what's really important is how Rehnquist got there. Now, I already told you, many of you thought, well, this is all hot social and political issues. And, if he's liberal, then he comes out and he says, yeah, this is going to be property because we got to have, or he's conservative. So he's going to, but that's not actually how we decide cases. Everybody. That's how the popular media thinks we decide cases. But that's not how we decide cases. So how do we decide cases? There's actually a method to this madness. What's his analysis? Where does he start? Go ahead, Alex, tell me.
Yeah, so it looks like he claims that, or he agrees that, well, how do I explain it? He said that there's basically, he used an older case.
What? Start right there.
The case.
Okay, so stop right there. Alex, why does he use this old stuff? Why is he looking at old stuff?
Because it shows how the court ruled in the past over what, a similar situation.
And okay, also, this is language out of a very specific statute, 1985. Do you think using that old stuff had anything to do with maybe when the statute was passed? Let's explore this just for a second. Okay, so if you're trying to figure out what a word in a statute means, how would we do that? How would we engage in this enterprise? Now, first of all, this is going to drive you nuts because this is what drives people nuts about all lawyers. We're like, well, when you say Apple, what do you mean? Do you mean like an Apple computer? You mean like Apple the fruit? Like what exactly are we, right? And what we do is we make words mean what we want them to mean. So how do we do this process of sort of saying, what did the word property mean in this particular statute? Sophia, tell me.
I think that maybe they go back to like thinking of that time and thinking what were the conditions of the living conditions to see how they would use that language and what they would refer to.
Correct, right? We would think about those words in context. And look, this isn't a liberal or conservative thing. This is how do we go in and think about statutes, and we all agree on this. If we had this statute emerge in the late 1800s, which is right when it was coming around, right? We got to pay attention to how people thought about this word at that time. I'm going to use a simple example. Back in the early 1900s, if you saw the word, and even into the 40s, if you saw the word car in an opinion, it wasn't what you think of, which is an automobile, generally. What they meant was a railroad car. Railroad car. Okay. And in fact, in a lot of opinions, the Supreme Court still calls cars, what we call cars, motor vehicles or automobiles, right? Because they are not, they think of cars, it's that historic break, as railroad cars. Now you see some evolution of this, but again, you know, that's how we think about it. So part of what we're doing here is in this exercise, we're trying to say, what does that word mean? Now, the defendants and the 11th Circuit had done something that you see all the time. They said, well, that word property and that reference to property looks a whole lot like what we were just talking about. In the Due Process Clause, in the Constitution, there is a reference to life, liberty, and property. And so the word property shows up in the Constitution. And they said, we know what that means. That means under state law, it qualifies as a property interest. And I'm going to tell you, every way to Sunday, this at-will employment is not defined under state property law as property. End of discussion. In other words, property under 1985 means exactly the same as what it means in the Constitution. Now, for those of us who are engineers, like me, we kind of like that consistency. We kind of like, well, if property means it here, it means the same thing over here and here and here and here. That's not how the law works, though, friends. That's not how it works. Instead, we're going to do this dissection of what did that word mean when the statute was passed. And we're going to use a bunch of tools, and depending on your philosophy, right, we're going to maybe use different tools. But everybody agrees. We look back and we say, what did the word property mean when we used it in a similar context, right? And so what we might use, if the statute had a definition section, we'd definitely look at that. Definition, you definitely look at that. Okay, so if there's a definition of property, we'd be bound by that definition. There's no such definition. So instead, Rehnquist says, okay, let's look at how we thought about property and at-will employment and would it qualify? And so he starts pulling all these sources that said, oh yeah, we actually think of property as embracing this at-will employment. Aha, right? And so if that's how people thought about it, especially in the legal context, then it seems appropriate and fitting for us to resolve, for us to be convinced that when Congress put in the word property, that's what they meant. They meant to include at-will employment. So what Rehnquist is doing, right, is he presents for you the two sides of the case. One side essentially said, property means the same thing as it means in the Constitution, which means under state law, it has to be a property interest. Plaintiff's side says, no. That's not what it means. When this statute was passed, property wasn't equivalent to what it meant in the Constitution. It had a different connotation. because we understood that what we were trying to protect, the interest we were trying to protect here, was exactly this kind of interest in these whistleblower cases. Okay. Now I see I have come up to my time. I usually try to be very timely. Let me though stop and make sure we don't have any questions. Anybody have any questions? Anything you're thinking about? Now, how about that? I'm telling you that a conservative justice, what people would label as a conservative justice, did something that felt maybe different than what you thought. Huh. Maybe this law thing, there's something to be said for it, right? It's not for the faint of heart, certainly. And we aren't going to make a whole lot of assumptions, at least that I would advise you against that, right? And how we look at those opinions and how we process through the analysis. All right. So with that, what you've been introduced to, by the way, is how we do statutory interpretation. You've learned a little bit, I hope, about civil procedure and how we think about the world of procedure and rules. And I even worked in a little con law for you. So there you go. In about 45 minutes, you did a lot. You guys are ready. All right. Anything else that anybody wants to mention, talk about? Shar, is there anything I missed here? Are you still puzzled?
I am.
Okay. Hey, it has been great fun. I'm so glad we had a chance to spend a little time together. It's real easy if you'd like to get in touch with me. Shar will share that information. I would be glad to talk with any of you at any time. I have Zoom appointments available. And of course, if you are in the Pittsburgh area, I would hope that I get a chance to meet with you as well. So I hope you enjoy the day. I'll probably catch up with you a little bit later, but thanks for a fun ride in the class and good luck. We'll see you soon. So Shar, I'm going to send it back to you.
Yep. Thank you, Dean Wildermuth. Well, hopefully all of you enjoyed class. Thank you. And that's just a little preview of what you may all experience in the fall, because Dean Wildermuth does teach this semester. She's teaching 2 of our classes. So super exciting for you. So right now we are just going to take a short break. I wanted to just let you know that we will start back up at 11:30 with a faculty panel. I wanted to just let you know who's going to be joining us. We have Professor Ron Brand, and he's the director of our Center for International Legal Education. We also have Professor Grant McIntyre, and he's in charge of our clinics here at Pitt Law. And we also have Professor Andrelli Brutus St. Val. And so all of them will be here. So I have 3 of the 3 great professors joining us from 11:30 to 12. We are going to kind of go on pause. So you can go ahead, take a break, grab a drink, stretch your legs, and hopefully we'll see you back here at 11:30. And we will leave the Zoom on. We'll have music playing in the background. So enjoy your break, and I'll see you soon. Hi, hello everyone. Welcome back. It is 11:31, and it does look like our next panel is here. So I'm going to ask our wonderful faculty members who are with us if they can go ahead and show their video and unmute themselves. And what we're going to do, we have a half an hour with our panel today, and I'm going to give them each a little bit of time to talk about themselves and a little bit about the areas that they are representing and that they're teaching here at Pitt Law. And then I am going to open it up for questions and answers after everybody speaks. And so I'm going to ask if Professor Brand will start us off. I know that he has a PowerPoint that he's going to share with us. So Professor Brand, I do believe you have co-hosting abilities. So you should be able to share your screen whenever you're ready. And make sure you unmute.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
There you go. Okay. So Ron, I'm going to go ahead and hand the presentation right over to you.
Okay. Welcome everybody. And I hope that is now showing okay. If I can get the full screen there. Charmaine, does that look all right? Okay. Welcome, everybody. I am the director of our Center for International Legal Education. So I want to talk to you about opportunities for international legal education, for using your time at Pitt Law to prepare you for what is today the international practice of law. And I should start with the first PowerPoint. I start with three premises. One, law school involves really quite a big investment on your part. Number two, some students don't get the education they pay for in law school. And number three, at Pitt Law, you can get much more than what you pay for. And that's what you should try to do. So how do you do that? Well, in terms of the international element, the starting point is that all of you are in a generation in which you will have to be a global lawyer. Now, we see two types here. The every student, we think that every student should get some exposure to international matters because no matter what area of law you practice, it will cross borders, national borders. Second is the focused international student, and that's the one we really try to provide programs for at the Center for International Legal Education. You need to be ready for a career that will emphasize the transnational practice of law. Now, for the every student at Pitt Law, there is a requirement that you take at least one international course, but there's opportunities to do much more, and I hope that all of you will engage in some of those opportunities. I'm going to focus on the focused international student, but these lessons are transferable. And at the center, we have two mantras. One is that all education is personal. That means you should get involved personally in what you're doing. Connect with your professors, connect with those of people on the staff that can help create opportunities for you. Our second mantra is your transcript will get you your degree, your resume will get you your career. So think beyond the transcript, think beyond the courses, but begin by planning your transcript. And for international programs, you want to do a strong 1L year, have a strong core curricular performance. Then look at and think about adding an international and comparative law certificate, add elective courses in international and comparative law. At University of Pittsburgh, we have a wonderful structure with the University Center for International Studies that allows you to participate in interdisciplinary activities that are either area focused geographically in a part of the globe or completely global. We have a number of international moot opportunities where you can take on problems and prepare arguments. You can study abroad, you can do language study, you can do internships abroad. And we have joint degree programs that you can be involved in. Beyond the transcript, you should plan your resume. The International Law Society provides an opportunity to get involved with other students, internships, language study, moot competitions, postgraduate opportunities, publications, scholarships and fellowships. There are a number of specific opportunities that are tied to international programs. Come see us at the center for that. There's also our wonderful jurist database and program at University of Pittsburgh. And I think you'll hear more about that, but that's something to get involved in. It's truly international and provides a presence that's global for Pitt Law. Let me just give some example of what you can do, even though in the first year you don't have international courses. We have a number of informational meetings, one directed at 1Ls. We have meetings on internships abroad, study abroad, opportunities for scholarships, Boren, Fulbright, Peace Corps, USIS opportunities, and our graduate and former assistant director at CILE West Rist, who's now executive director at the American Society of International Law, joins us each year to talk about pursuing a career in international law. There are unique opportunities at Pitt Law. We have a wonderful LLM exchange program with the University of Paris 1 Sorbonne, particularly if you speak French. And even if you don't, it's a way to get an LLM in your 3 years as a JD, you can combine a JD at Pitt Law and an LLM at the best law school in France. We have languages for lawyers courses. We have summer school. We have a specific program with the University of Augsburg in Germany. There are other study abroad programs. We can help you find the right one for you. Vismoot trainers, we have our students help train students for Vismoot opportunities throughout the Balkans and the Middle East. It's something you can get involved in, both in the Vismoot, doing it yourself and helping train others. We have a direct line to internships at probably the premier arbitration law firm in the world, Wilmer Hale in London, and Gary Bourne, who is there. FLAS fellowships. If you want to study languages with your legal studies, probably the best scholarship in the law school. Pays full tuition plus $19,000. If any of you have a better scholarship than that, let me know. USIS certificate programs, joint degree programs with our Graduate School of Public and International Affairs. There are wonderful opportunities while you study at Pitt Law. The doorway to all those opportunities is open. It's at room 317A. It's also at my email address, rbrand@pitt.edu. So I hope that some of you will be involved in the international programs. I look forward to seeing you either on Zoom or talking with you by email or seeing you in person when we're back in person and can tell you more about that. But please, we are here to help you make use of us. Come and ask questions. Let us know what you need to make your career work with your law degree at Pitt Law. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Professor Brand. Next, I'm going to introduce Professor Andrelli St. Val.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Charmaine. Well, first, congratulations and welcome. I'm very excited to meet you all. I currently teach in the Legal Research and Writing program to all first-year law students. So I really hope I get to meet you and get to have you in class. So my area of expertise, or I don't have a PowerPoint, I do apologize, but my area of specializations or expertise is legal research and writing, and it comes from my career as being a career law clerk, both at the Florida 2nd District Court of Appeals and also as court executive at the Wayne County Probate Court. I also have a passion and love of labor and employment law. I have an LLM or a Master's of Law in Labor and Employment Law. I'm really interested in the human aspect of the law, and labor and employment really gives that to me. So I love labor and employment. In addition, I also have an interest and from my prior experience as a law clerk in post-conviction relief and post-conviction motions. I worked on hundreds of post-conviction appeals and criminal appeals as well, and also love of probate. I know it sounds boring, but it's so great. I love estates and wills cases. Again, it's the human aspect of what happens. You know, it's probate is really the second family law court. And so you get to learn a lot about people. As you can tell, I'm a people person. You get to learn about people, and I'm really interested in human interest and connecting with people and learning more about them. And probate and labor and employment law allow me to do that. So I really hope that I get to have you in class and that you're enjoying the program for today.
Thank you so much, Professor St. Val. And as she mentioned too, she teaches our 1L. So you could potentially have Professor St. Val in the fall. And next up, we have Professor Grant McIntyre.
Thank you. Happy to see so many faces. I'm wearing two hats today, and as the father to a 20-month-old, I thought about working on perfecting my dad humor and actually bringing two hats, but I didn't. So I can talk a bit about both our environmental program and our clinical program. I'll start with environmental program. I direct the environmental law clinic here at Pitt Law. And in the clinic program in general, we have 7 clinics. And what makes a clinic special is it's an opportunity to work directly with clients as their lawyers under the supervision of professors. I do the environmental clinic that covers anything from air and water issues to public land issues to anything in between. We have clinics that cover immigration, tax law, securities arbitration, health law, elder law. There's so many options, so many different types of law, but at the core of each of them is the opportunity to learn how to be a lawyer and how to work directly with clients on really difficult and interesting issues, including some probate issues, as Professor St. Val mentioned. It's a really great opportunity. You're eligible starting your second semester of your 2L year. We have many different options in the clinical program, but you really want to be thinking now about how you're going to fit that into your law school experience. It's such a great way to help out and to become part of a community of current clinicians, as well as the community of past and future clinicians. It's a pretty common story that people remember their experience in the legal clinics. I liked it so much, I came back to be a professor. I graduated Pitt Law in 2008 and was in the environmental clinic. And it's kind of fascinating to see, even in that what feels like a short period of time to me, how much the environmental picture has changed in Pittsburgh, in the United States, and internationally. And so it's a really cool opportunity to participate on that side. On the environmental law side, we have the environmental law clinic. We have an environmental law and energy law certificate. So we have courses in environmental law, energy law, oil and gas law, and we are always kind of adding and adjusting courses to meet the ever-changing face of environmental law. Within the certificate, you can take classes, for example, about OSHA, about occupational safety and health. You can take a course specifically about climate change in the law that we have an adjunct professor that's been teaching that since, I believe, 2007. And probably the course today looks entirely different from what it looked like in 2007. There's some really good opportunities to learn from our Dean Amy, who was a Supreme Court clerk and practiced environmental law and teaches a course about Supreme Court practice. There's all sorts of experience from the nonprofit side to the law firm side, the government side, and at the state, federal, and local level. And so it's a really good program and a really good alumni network to tap into to talk about those issues. So I'll leave it there and make sure we have some time for questions. Happy to see you all and answer more questions.
Great. Excuse me. Great. Thank you, Professor McIntyre. And again, these there are so many opportunities within the law school. I mean, these are just a few. And really, we just wanted to kind of highlight a couple of these programs for you. Obviously, as you enter law school and hopefully at Pitt Law, we will also provide you more detailed information during your 1L year. But what I'd like to do at this point is just find out too, what kind of questions do you have for our faculty members, if any? Again, we have faculty that represent many different areas of the different types of specialty programs here at Pitt Law. So what I will do, if you want to raise your hand, we can call on you, or just go ahead. Kim, I think we have the 4 of us spotlight. I'm going to go ahead and, does anybody have any questions? I'm going to go to gallery view so I can see you. I see Lauren O'Grady. Lauren, I see your hand up. If you want to unmute yourself and go ahead.
Thank you. I'd be interested to hear, I think most of you touched a little bit on building your first, 1L year to kind of lead you to those interests and more opportunities after the curriculum is less strict. Do you have specific resources or advice in how we can best kind of look to the 2L year and 3L year while also kind of keeping our minds open? I have a pretty specific focus in public interest, but interested in exploring immigration. The health law clinic seems interesting to me. So kind of interested to hear, how we learn more about those opportunities and where to look for that information.
I can answer. So during my 1L year, I knew nothing. I went in not really knowing anything or what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go. So I just kept an open mind. But as I took my classes, I thought about, do I enjoy this? How much do I like it versus not? And I really just kept an open mind to opportunities as they arose. I know for my 1Ls now, one of the things that I try to do, and we all try to do as legal writing faculty, is we try to give you some of those exposures. So we bring in speakers to come in and talk about the career paths they've taken. For example, we had one of my former judges come in and speak to our class, who's currently the chief judge of the Court of Appeals, Second District in Florida, along with her 2 law clerks. We had defense counsel on one of the cases. We're actually working on an appellate brief, and we had defense counsel and we had the assistant attorney general working on the cases come in, talk about the cases, but also talk about their careers and the paths they've taken. We strategically work on giving you the exposures to different areas of the law, different practices. So you can start thinking about the lawyer you want to become, the areas that might interest you. In addition, I've had, faculty from the clinic come in and speak to the class about the various clinic opportunities so you can learn more about the clinics. So throughout your 1L year, you'll get exposure so you can start thinking about the things that interest you. And you will be assigned an advisor who will help you to plan for your 2L year, to discuss options that you have, classes you can take, and really help you along the way. So you're not left alone, you're not floundering, and you're supported along every step of the way. But be open. The world is yours. Explore. This is the time to do it.
I might add to that. I think that you want to think about what you want to do after law school. Where do you want to be 10 years from now? And then think about how you best use the time in law school. And I'll tell you 2 things you have in law school that you may never have again in your life. And they are 2 summers. And you think about planning law school by planning your academic years, but how you use those summers is incredibly important in creating your resume, helping you prepare for what you want to be doing afterwards, whether that's working with a judge, working with a law firm, doing an internship overseas, working with a nonprofit organization that helps you prepare for what you want to do. I think that's incredibly important in helping you define where you want to be. The other thing I would suggest is once you're here and once you're in classes, particularly if we're on site, which we plan to be in the fall, figure out the professors whose interests are most aligned with yours and knock on doors and talk to them. I think we have a very receptive faculty for that. We're here not just to help you in the classroom, but we're here to help you design where you want to be in your life. And that's what you should focus on. So make use of us as resources.
Yeah, I completely agree with my colleagues there. And I also, a really good thing you can do in your 1L year, there's going to be so many things, and our curriculum in particular takes you in a lot of different places. So pay attention not just to the professors that you like or the classes that you like, but why it is that you like those professors or you like that topic. Do you like it because it's a more philosophical discussion about the law, or do you like really getting into unwinding complex property issues? You can start that process in your first year and kind of think about why it is that you're enjoying certain courses, especially, and try to think about how you can shape the future of your law school experience to get a bit more exposure to that type of thinking, that type of lawyering, that topic area, whatever it might be.
Thank you, Lauren. That was a great question. Other questions for our faculty? Alex?
Hey, yeah, I just had a quick question about on the international opportunities. Professor Brand, you'd mentioned that there was like a moot trainer program with Balkan and Middle Eastern law schools. Can you just like maybe tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure, certainly. We've worked for Pitt students. We support teams from Pitt to go to competitions in international competitions. There's the Jessup International Law Competition. There are a number of other competitions. The one we focus on most heavily and have used as a pedagogical platform is the VIS International Arbitration Moot, which actually starts this weekend, normally in Vienna, but virtually this year. But we've also worked with the State Department and the Commerce Department through our Center for International Legal Education to use that platform to develop curriculum in law schools in the former Yugoslavia, Balkans, in Ukraine, in the Middle East. And when our students then do the VIS moot, particularly if they do it their second year, then in their third year, I've been able to have the commercial law development program at Commerce pay for their expenses to go over and help me train students in the Balkans and the Middle East. And this year we had, it was all done virtually, but we had, out of 9 advisors we used with the Commerce Department program, 8 of them were Pitt students or graduates who were then training those students. And I'll tell you something, if you really want to learn something, you teach it. And that's the opportunity for students to be doing that.
Thanks so much.
Great question, Alex. Other questions? Elizabeth.
I actually have another question for Professor Brand. So is it common for recently graduated law students to pursue Fulbright grants abroad and that sort of thing? How does the International Center help to kind of foster that? Could you speak to that perhaps?
Yeah, we encourage students to look at those kinds of opportunities, not just Fulbright, but the Boren Scholarship Program, which combines language and use of languages. And so, as I noted in the fall, we do have a program that helps students tie into the Boren and the Fulbright programs. The University of Pittsburgh generally is known as one of the most prolific providers of students who do Fulbrights for universities around the country. And we've been a part of that. Our students have done those kinds of experience, as well as Peace Corps and similar experiences following law school. And we're happy to work at the center to help you connect with those. The Fulbright program, I did a Fulbright. I think it's one of the best things you can do. And so I'm always happy to find people who are interested in that, and we're happy to help get you there.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Rob, did you have a question? I saw that you had your hand raised.
I did, yes. This is probably more tailored for Professor McIntyre. How common is it for students to get involved with the various clinics that Pitt offers? Is it something that, most students throughout their Pitt Law career will get involved in, or is it, is it more, a lesser percentage based on interest, or just kind of curious about popularity with the specific clinics?
Sure. There's kind of the boring answer is that we have enough spots in clinics that we don't necessarily guarantee that you could take a clinic, but we probably could. So the availability is usually there for clinic in general. A lot of people find it as a cornerstone part of their law school experience. But how you come to a clinic is after at least 3 semesters of law school, and you've done a lot of courses, you've read a lot of cases, and you're kind of getting a little eager. And maybe you've had a summer experience that first summer that introduces you to law, but you're kind of getting eager to really experience what it is to be a lawyer. And so that's an opportunity to do that. So it's popular to do that. Some clinics are pretty regularly ones that people look to, and that can change from time to time. But once you're in the clinic, you become a part of that broader clinic community. I'll also give another boring piece of the answer a little bit, which is all students are required to have 6 credits of experiential learning, and the clinics are a way that a lot of students look to satisfy that requirement in part. So it's another nice thing if we are able to return to in person is the clinic space is actually within the law school, but separate from the law school, and designed to replicate a office environment, a work environment. It's accessible only to clinic students. And so there's a real camaraderie and kind of a nice community that builds just amongst clinic students, and having that space to work, to talk to other clinic students and learn more about their experiences in the clinic and just generally in law school. So it's a really nice community, both for you when you're in law school, but also once you graduate. The connections you make in the clinic space tend to continue on after law school.
Thank you.
Great question. Thanks, Rob. Any other questions? Yes, Matt.
Hi. I was wondering if there is a difference between the clinics and the practicums, or if that was just the old term for clinics that Pitt used.
Sure. The short answer is yes. One of the biggest differences between a clinic and a practicum or an externship is the status of actually being responsible for your case directly with your client. So one of the statuses that you have in the clinic is as a certified legal intern, which means that you are functioning as an attorney for your client under the supervision of a professor. Practicums and externships sometimes don't have that direct responsibility or relationship with a client. You're still working on legal issues that are complex and interesting, but they may be a bit detached from that direct responsibility. Whereas in the clinic, and in particular, some clinics, we expect and prepare students to go into court, to go into hearings, to prepare legal documents for their clients. So it's kind of that extra responsibility that really attaches. And the clinical, the seminar component of the clinic, the in-class component, is really detailed and in depth in a way that you don't necessarily have the time to get into in a practicum setting. So hopefully that can help separate that out a bit for you.
It did. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Any other questions? I want to make sure I'm looking at everybody. Mandy, you have your hand up. Go ahead, Mandy.
Hi. I have a twofold question. I'm sorry. First one is, how closely does the career service department work with students post-graduation to find a job? And secondly, I'm interested in like healthcare law. So I would just like more information about that and opportunities in the summer to pursue that.
And before any of the professors respond to Mandy, hopefully you'll be able to join us again at 2:00, because I do have Professor Mary Crossley joining us, and she can talk a little bit more too about health law and health law opportunities. So I just wanted to plug our 2:00 faculty panel as well. Do any of the professors want to touch upon whether it be the health law or PDO? If not, I'm happy to jump in.
I might just say that I think our professional development office is excellent, and that's really important for students. They do a terrific job. They also coordinate that with professors. You don't want to. There are people in the law school who can help you find jobs. Get to know professors. Sometimes professors have contacts that will help lead to that as well. So I encourage you to do that. The health law certificate program is really one of the strong points of the law school. And again, Mary Crossley will be able to say more about that this afternoon.
Well, I just want to add, I do know that the Career Services does work with students post-graduation, but also while you're in law school as well, they're there to help you to land some of those summer positions. And in particularly this year, we worked with the Career Services and being able to present where all legal writing professors presented a course on how to write effective cover letters. So working in coordination with our Career Services or PDO, We helped students prepare really strong and effective cover letters while Career Services worked on the resume aspect. So that way students were fully prepared and to enter the job market and start applying for those summer positions.
Thank you. And just just one more comment on our professional development office. That's what ours is called. It equals Career Services. But Mandy, if you do decide to come to Pitt Law, you will actually be introduced to all of our folks in PDO over the summer. They'll start working with you even before orientation. Things like they'll be collecting your resume prior to orientation so that you get that into them, so that when you meet them for the first time, they'll already have your resume, have some ideas and thoughts to share about their resume. And then of course, as Professor St. Val said, they'll continue to work with you, as much as you need them to. And they are a really fantastic group of people. So they had their own Zoom meeting about a week ago. But again, certainly you will be seeing them in the future if you decide to come to Pitt Law, and we hope you do. And so thank you for your question, Mandy. Sophia, I see that you have your hand raised too, if you want to go ahead and ask the next question.
Yes, I have a question for Professor Brand as well. This is regarding the LLM exchange program in Paris. I was wondering if you could describe how the process to enter a program like that looks like.
Certainly. We encourage students to study abroad, period, whether that be summer, semester, or for an entire year. You can actually at Pitt, unlike a lot of other law schools, choose a law school anywhere in the world and do an LLM there and count that toward your JD. We have a very specific program with the University of Paris 1, the Sorbonne, which is a fantastic law school, which means that, and Professor Vivian Curran is the principal person on the faculty for this, but we send 2 students a year there, usually in the 3L year. And they send 2 students here for our LLM program. So it's a one-for-one exchange. And it puts you into that. Now, it's good to plan your courses so that you take courses. It's best if you're highly proficient in French. You can take courses at the Sorbonne in either French or English for the LLM. But the best thing to do is once you're here, connect with Professor Curran, talk to her about it. She helps you prepare. She does a course each year in international commercial arbitration that's entirely taught in French. And the students in that course prepare a memorandum and prepare oral arguments for a competition that's held in Paris. And we also have a French for Lawyers course that you can take, and you can tie languages to your study, and we can work with you on that. So there's a package we have. It's not just one opportunity to go do an LLM. We help you prepare so that you really do it well.
Thank you. And that was a great question, Sophia. And I see that Kim did put Professor Vivian Kern's email address in the chat box. So feel free to reach out to her too. She is fabulous and always is happy to talk to our admitted students. So if you have more questions, please feel free to reach out to her. I'm going to take one more question. I have Jenna. She has her hand raised. It's a little bit after 12. So Jenna, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, just a quick question. I wanted to know how you guys felt about like extracurriculars, like clubs and stuff the first year, and which of those to maybe focus on, how many you think are reasonable to involve yourself in.
I can jump in a bit. First year is I think it's commonly kind of considered a very busy time. We'll put it that way. What's nice is you can usually find time for a meeting for a club to kind of learn a bit more about the club. and it's good to get to learn more about clubs in your first year, to kind of see what you're really interested in, and how you might want to spend some of your time going forward. I'm constantly amazed by our student groups. The work that they do in the different groups is incredible. Often our student groups work with the faculty on matters of concern or broader projects. And they're great. And so whatever you're interested in, to the extent there's a student group at Pitt Law, it's likely going to be a really rewarding experience. I think the first year is probably a bit more of a time to kind of learn a bit more about the clubs, and maybe not expect to devote a lot of your personal time, as you kind of sort through the first year of law school. But once that is up, and you've kind of made that connection to those clubs, you'll be able to do really amazing things in the areas of interest to you.
Thank you.
Charmaine, I might add just a comment on that. I think the student organizations at Pitt Law are really strong, and they're a great opportunity. And so get involved. The more you get involved in your first year, the more likely you can be a leader in one of those. But I think they're a great way. Your first year is a time, obviously, to explore. And some of you will come knowing exactly what you want to do. And that if you're in that category, get into the area. Some of you will come wanting to explore. And if you're in that area, check things out and use the opportunity just to sit in and see what's happening. But it's a way to find yourself. If you know where you want to go, then push on. If you don't yet, that's fine. Use it to explore.
Okay, and I apologize. Cindy, you had your hand raised too. So we're going to have Cindy ask the last question. Cindy, go ahead.
Yep. So I have a two-part question. One just for all the professors, and then one specifically for Professor Brand. So the first one being, if I were to pursue a joint degree, how exactly would internships or externships, would those vary time-wise? Are those different than like the average, law student? And then a question for Professor Brand would be, would you be able to elaborate on opportunities in Asia, or if there's study abroad in Asia?
Well, I'll take a shot at both of those questions. If you're doing a joint degree, you have a benefit that I've already mentioned. You have one more summer because it'll take you 4 years, and you can use those summers really quite well. If you do it with GISPIA for international affairs and want to focus on policy matters, it gives you a chance to do that. There are some wonderful internships. We've got great connections for internships in U.S. Government agencies that do international work in particular. And they're always asking me to send more Pitt students, not fewer. And so we want to have people who want to do that. And you can tie that together very well with GISPIA or any of our other joint degree programs, the business schools, health, others. Asia, we have very good contacts in various parts of Asia. We have graduates who are working in various places in Asia, and we're happy to connect you with them. The best way to do it is to try to get it one-on-one, so you've got specific people you're connected with from the start. Stop in, let's have a discussion. Happy to work with you on that. I'll plug a program we have coming up in May 18, 19, and 20. Our center, we're celebrating our 25th anniversary, and we've got a joint conference with our Asian Studies program here at Pitt, which is really strong. You should connect with them as well. We're looking at China, Hong Kong, and commercial law issues, and really looking at what's happening with the changes in Hong Kong as it relates to legal matters. And we've got a great panel, set of panels and keynotes coming up on that.
And if I'll just jump in quickly on the joint and Charmaine can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we have a JD MBA option with both Pitt, Katz, and Tepper. And so that's a really kind of a cool opportunity to combine either with Pitt or with Carnegie Mellon. And I've known a few students that have done that. And it's interesting. Business school, I think, is typically a 2-year program. But as Professor Brand said, having the additional summer really helps you, because you can kind of spend one summer maybe on the business side, one summer on the law side, and kind of see where you want to go. Many students go through with both. Some students prefer one or the other, but it's really cool that to have that opportunity in particular, either with Pitt or Carnegie Mellon, to have that as a part of your portfolio. I think one of the things, as you think about the future of law and why you come to law school, in part might be to find a job. That kind of non-law area is increasingly competitive, and the JD MBA combo is, I think, increasingly attractive on the job market more broadly. So that's a nice one I want to highlight in particular.
And I do see Jack has his hand up. I mean, this program is about all of your questions, so I'm happy to keep going. Hopefully our professors still have some time. I realize it is after 12 o'clock. And if you have to go, let me know. But Jack, you have a question, so I'd love to hopefully get that answered for you.
Yeah, this question is for Professor Brand. I was looking into those like area study certificates. Is that something that I should be applying to currently, or is it something I can add in like sometime during my 1L?
Those you could add at any time. And we have a number of centers. We've got West European Union Center, Russian and East European, Asian Studies, African Studies, Latin American Studies, Global Studies. They're wonderful sources of information. Anybody who's interested at all should connect with them. Sign up for the certificate in your area, even if you don't plan to complete the certificate, because they're wonderful sources of information on programs and scholarships. And they're just, it's a wonderful structure at the University of Pittsburgh that most universities do not have, that ties things together for area studies on an interdisciplinary way. It's a just great opportunity.
Okay, and so I know some of us have to get to other things. Real quick though, for all of our professors, I was just hoping you would end the program with maybe a little bit of advice for our admitted students as they make their decision, to enter law school, hopefully Pitt Law, particularly thinking about if there's something that they should be doing now or over the summer. And I'm going to have Professor McIntyre, if you'll go first. I know you have to leave, so any advice?
Sure. I think especially in the current time that we have, this is a time to be thoughtful and just think about all your options carefully, and try to think about where a place that gives you the most opportunities to learn about yourself. And once you do, gives you the chance to execute on those opportunities. So be open, be thoughtful, and try to find the right spot for you.
Thank you. Professor St. Bao, any last thoughts or advice?
Okay, that's a really good question. I think start thinking about the attorney you want to be, what kind of lawyer you want to be, and you have so much information available to you. It's at your fingertips. I mean, how amazing is that? So start really doing some of that deep reflection and considering why you want to go to law school, because that why will be the motivating factor to get you through some of the tougher times, if I'm being honest. And so you want to know your why, know it well, and make sure that it's something that, not just the money, something that's really of value to you. And remember that why. And then once you know your why and have some idea of where you want to go, really consider, like Professor McIntyre mentioned, what schools will support you in that why and help you to really accomplish your goals. And I think Pitt Law is a great place to help you do that. So yeah, think of your why and write it down. and remember that.
Fantastic. Great. Thank you so much. And Professor Brand, any last thoughts or advice?
Yeah, well, I'm the old person here, so I'll give the old person's advice because my children are now even older than the people who are entering law school. But I'll tell you what I told them when they went off to college. Number one, I told them choose the place that fits you. Don't choose based upon somebody else's rankings or understanding or preferences. And then once you get there, do three things. Work hard because that matters. Others can be smarter than you, but you can control whether you outwork them. Number two is have a good time. You should, because education and a good experience should go together. And then finally, get to know at least one professor well, because professors really can help you make a difference.
Great, thank you. Some great advice for you all. Thank you again to our awesome faculty panel for joining us today. And we are going to head into a very short break. Next up from 12:30 to 1:30, we are going to be meeting with a fantastic alumni panel. So go ahead and grab some lunch now, stretch out and join us back here at this Zoom link for 12:30, and we look forward to having you. And Lori McMaster will be moderating that panel. So super excited to talk with Lori too and all of our alumni. All right, we'll see you in about 10 minutes. Well, great, everybody. Welcome back. We have an exciting alumni panel here for you today. And we have our own Lori McMaster, who is not only an alumni here at Pitt Law, but she is also our executive director with our alumni engagement office. So Lori, I'm going to turn the mic over to you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Shar. I appreciate it. And welcome, everybody. On behalf of our panel today, I'd love to welcome all of the admitted students, and I hope you're having a great day so far. As Shar mentioned, my name is Lori McMaster, and I'm the Executive Director for External Relations here at the law school, which basically means I have the really cool job of getting to talk quite a bit with our alumni, as well as any other kinds of external stakeholders who might have an interest in partnering or collaborating with the law school in some way. So as Shar also mentioned, I graduated from Pitt Law in 1986 and had a phenomenal experience here. And it's given me so much in my life. I practiced as a trial attorney for 20 years after graduation, and then worked in a corporation as a legal recruiter, and came back to Pitt Law in 2011, where I oversaw the professional development office for 8 years until I was promoted about 1.5 years ago into my current role. So today you're going to be hearing from an incredible panel of alumni who are going to be sharing their insights regarding what they do, why it is they chose Pitt Law in the first place, and what they loved about it as students, and frankly, why they love being here in Pittsburgh. We're also going to be discussing how Pitt Law alumni assist students and one another in their careers and professional development. We've reserved 10 minutes at the end of today's presentation so you can ask questions, and we're really excited about those. And so my thought is we can get right down to it, and I'm going to ask our alumni panelists to please introduce themselves, share when they graduated, where they work, and what they do. And how about if we start with the Honorable Mary Jane Bowes. Judge Bowes.
You're muted, Judge.
I think you're muted, Judge.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Those must be the most commonly uttered words these days. Good afternoon again, and thank you for having me here. And I'm delighted to see so many great candidates here for the law school. I graduated undergraduate from Georgetown University, and then I am a hometown Pittsburgh girl, so I returned to Pittsburgh to attend Pitt Law School. I graduated in 1979, which I recognize is well before any of you were born. That was 42 years ago. After I graduated, I worked as a judicial law clerk for the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, as well as the Superior Court, for about 5 years. And then I moved into a general practice. I worked for a mid-sized law firm, and I had my own firm for many years. Eventually, I moved in-house into an environmental remediation company. And from there, I ran for and was elected to the Superior Court of Pennsylvania, which is one of 2 intermediate appellate courts in Pennsylvania. It is a court of general jurisdiction. I was a general practitioner, so I handled a lot of cases that I now see in our general jurisdiction as a Superior Court judge. So looking backwards, I was able to connect the dots, and my experience as a practicing attorney was very helpful to me in my role as a judge on the Superior Court. So that's where I am, and that's what I'm doing.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Judge. We're going to turn to Elizabeth Hughes, who is also the president of our Law Alumni Association and of the Allegheny County Bar Association, which means in my world, she's basically the queen of everything.
Thanks. I'm just trying to be like you, Lori. That's all. Good afternoon and welcome to you all as admitted Pitt Law students. And I'm very happy to be meeting you as you begin this journey. This is the very beginning of your journey here. So hopefully we'll give you some valuable information today and answer a few questions for you. So I currently work at UPMC. I'm associate counsel in the corporate legal department. And I'm basically that I have general counsel duties for the UPMC Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh, UPMC Mercy, UPMC, soon to have UPMC McGee Women's Hospital, and also the UPMC Children's Community Pediatrics practices. So we stay busy. As you know, Pittsburgh is a large, very healthcare related city that has a lot of opportunities in the healthcare industry. I didn't know that this is where I would end up when I started at Pitt Law, but I'm very happy I did. And much like Judge Bowes, a lot of the experiences that I had both at Pitt Law and in my career so far have really fit nicely into what I'm doing now. Previously, I was in private practice, practicing primarily in areas of family law. And I was also outside counsel for UPMC at that time on guardianship work and some other health care related issues that would come up where they needed outside counsel. And before that, I was a county solicitor with the Allegheny County Law Department, and also clerked out of law school for the Superior Court of Pennsylvania for the Honorable Justin Johnson. So Pitt Law prepared me so well for all of these tasks and these career changes that I made. I felt like I got such a great education at Pitt Law. It gave me the knowledge and the background and the confidence to be able to go forth in my career and kind of, pivot when I needed to. So I'm looking forward to meeting you all more and getting to speak with you as you start your journey. And I will turn it over now to our next person.
Wonderful. And so now I have the pleasure of introducing you to Morgan Moody. Take it away, Morgan.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today. My name is Morgan Moody. I'm a staff attorney at an organization called Kids Voice. I'm a 2015 graduate from Pitt Law, which is crazy to me that we're coming up on 6 years, because it doesn't feel like I feel like I was just in law school. So I primarily, it's hard for me to qualify what my practice area is in because I'm only 6 years out of law school. But primarily what I do day to day is I work in the child welfare system as a guardian ad litem. So I represent children who, from birth to age 21, who come into contact with the child welfare system due to abuse or neglect or truancy or various other reasons. So I met Elizabeth my second year of law school, and she was so excited at the time to find another family practitioner. So she just kind of took me under her wing, and I have experience working in family law firms. I've worked for legal services prior to coming to Kids Voice. I clerked for a family court judge and interned for several family court judges. So family law is probably my practice area, but right now I'm focused in juvenile law. And I'm just so excited to see all the faces of hopefully future fellow Pitt Law alum.
Thank you so much, Morgan. And now I get to introduce you to Kyle Higgins. Take it away, Kyle.
Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you. I will say I'm much less impressive than the rest of the panelists, but I graduated from Pitt Law in 2018, so I'm still pretty early in my career. I am a corporate associate at Reed Smith in Pittsburgh. I focus my practice primarily on mergers and acquisitions, which includes representing strategic buyers and financial buyers, and also selling entities. And I also work in venture capital and other investment transactions and general corporate work as well. So yeah, happy to be here and happy to answer any questions you might have, and saw you on Pitt Law.
Well, thanks, Kyle. And so, interestingly enough, everybody on this panel was once in the exact same position that you admitted students were in. We had been admitted to Pitt Law, and then we were all faced with the decision of, well, are we going to go to Pitt Law? And so we thought it would be helpful for you to hear their perspectives on why they chose Pitt Law. So Morgan, how about if you'd be able to start us off here?
Absolutely. So I'm actually now a self-claimed Pittsburgh transplant. So I was not from Pittsburgh, but my family has ties to McKeesport. So my great-great-grandmother lived in McKeesport and actually was one of the first African Americans to serve on the school board. So this Western PA has always had sort of a special place in our family. And when I got the letter that had me running through my household that I was admitted to Pitt, at the time, I'm an Army brat. I'm a kid who's lived in a number of different places. So the idea of moving to a new place where I had never been wasn't something that worried me. But one of the big things that sort of pushed me towards Pittsburgh, and especially Pitt Law, was just coming to take a tour of the law school, meeting. Mimi was there that day, so I got to meet Mimi, go over sort of some of those questions, walk around the city a little bit and familiarize myself, reviewing the opportunities that Pitt presented to me. So at the time, my family was still located in Virginia, and Pitt had and still has a program where students can spend a semester in DC. And so I looked at that as keeping, the door open if I wanted to transition back to that area where I had a lot of family and a lot of close contacts. That would give me that opportunity to do that. And also for me, I received some financial aid that also helped me when I was weighing my decisions of which school to attend, because as you all know, that there's no shortage of student loan debt out there. And so that was also a big factor in my decision making. But what I can say is I'm sort of a person who just makes a decision and goes with it. And I'm so happy with the decision I made, because 5.5 going on 6 years, 6 years after I graduated, but 9 years basically after I moved to Pittsburgh, only knowing one other person. I have just been welcomed into the legal community, into the overall community, and it's the best decision I could have made as to where I wanted to start my legal career, and has just provided me with so many opportunities. My sisters keep saying she's never moving back home, because it has just been the best experience I think you can have as a law student and as a new lawyer, because every legal market is not like the one in Allegheny County, and you don't have sort of the mentorship that you get at Pitt Law. So I could go on, but I want to be mindful of my time and that there are other panelists who have their own stories to share.
Well, thanks, Morgan. Kyle, how about if you share your story next?
Yeah, sure. So I am a native Pittsburgher. And after college, I worked in a year for a year in New York, and I was working in consulting. But before I started that, I realized in college that I wanted to go to law school, and I wanted to come back to Pittsburgh and be a lawyer in Pittsburgh. And I thought, how do I do that? And the answer was pretty easy, just to come back and try to go to Pitt, because to me, if you want to be a lawyer in Pittsburgh, really there's no doubt in my mind that Pitt is a place to go. And so it was a little bit more of a it was methodical, but it was an easy decision for me. For financial reasons, it was really great as well. And I don't know, I just think that and I can get into later about why Pitt Law is so great once you're there and once you've graduated. But to me, it just seemed like you only have a couple options if you want to be a lawyer in Pittsburgh, and be exposed to the legal community while you're a law student here. And Pitt is just, it's a comprehensive research institution. It's well known. It just, to me, it seemed like, the brand and the reality was just that it was a more robust program here in Pittsburgh. So.
Well, thanks, Kyle. Elizabeth, how about you?
So I'm also from Pittsburgh, born and raised, and a proud Pittsburgh native and huge Steelers fan. At the time I applied to law school, I had been away from the education sector. I was out in the workforce. I had 7 years between undergraduate and deciding to go to law school. So for those of you who are in that same situation, or maybe you had some time between graduating from undergrad, you worked and then decided, hey, I'm going to take this plunge. Pitt Law was just a perfect fit and a perfect environment for me. It was home, but I did have other places that I was looking at. I applied to Case Western, I'd applied to Howard, I applied to Akron. There was quite a number of schools, and I got into them, and so I had to make a decision. But when I came to visit Pitt, it just wasn't even a question. The staff and administration just made me feel so welcome. The collegiality, was obvious. I talked to a few students who were going here, some who I had actually known for a period of time. The quality of the education and professors was attractive to me. And at the time I was living in Phoenix, Arizona. So it was kind of a big deal. I'd lived out in Phoenix for about 6 years. And so it was coming back and coming back home, which was great. But, it was a huge change from, working every day and deciding to go to law school where you're, now you're back as a 1L. It's a little bit different. I was supervising folks and had this career. And then I was like, oh, let's go to law school. So, that's a whole change of everything, your atmosphere, you're jumping into something that you just don't know about. There's so many things you have to learn. And so I was 30, when I did that. So I just felt so at home and so comfortable at Pitt Law. And I felt like it was an environment where you were going to be pushed to excel, but not an environment where it was going to be this kind of cutthroat, paper chase. If you've ever seen some of the movies about, or How to Get Away with Murder, it's not law school. That's not what you do in law school. But I felt like it was going to still give me an opportunity to really, push me to be the best I could be, at the same time in a very warm and welcoming atmosphere. And so that was the first thing that was super apparent to me the moment I stepped into Pitt Law, that it was a welcoming atmosphere, and I was going to have the support that I needed as a student.
And Judge Bose, what prompted you to choose Pitt Law?
Well, as I said, I went to Georgetown, and my aspirational goal was to wind up in Congress, which fortunately that did not come true. But at the time, they said, you know, if you think you're headed that way, then you should return to, you know, where you're from. And so I did come back. I was also married at the time, and my husband was working in Pittsburgh. So I was really anchored to Pittsburgh. So as Kyle said, the choices are few, but it was a clear and easy choice. I was so delighted to accept the University of Pittsburgh Law School. I had taken classes along the way at Pitt, so I was familiar with Pitt. So it felt like coming home. And actually, as Kyle was saying, you know, Pitt is such a world-class institution in so many different ways that the law school has always been elevated along with the University of Pittsburgh. And I did, in fact, take classes. At the time, there were some classes offered in the School of Public Health. They were offered to the law students. And at the time, Elizabeth, I had interest in health law. So I was pursuing that. So they, and I know now they have many joint programs. I don't think that they offered those back then. And the reality is, excuse me, that the law school experience was probably pretty different back in the late 70s than it is now. We really didn't have all the clinics and the emphasis on practical application of the law. But the one thing I think that has remained consistent throughout all these years is the emphasis on a world-class legal education. And that's what really drew me to Pitt Law School. And I believe that that is what I received. And as Elizabeth was talking about, the professors were just so warm. It wasn't like us versus them. It was like team efforts. Like we're all in this together, and they were very accessible. Even back then in the dark ages, it was very easy to approach your professors and talk to them and make sure that you were on the right track. So, hometown, definitely, I was anchored as a result of that, but I was delighted with the choice of Pitt Law School, and I had a fabulous experience. I loved law school. And, back then there was this it's old now, but the movie The Paper Chase was out there. Elizabeth, what you were talking about, it was like terrifying. That was not the experience even back then. It was a delightful experience to study the law at Pitt Law School. I had a very positive experience, and very grateful for my choice.
Well, that's a great transition, because we were hoping now that the panelists could talk about sort of what their lived experience was as students and what they loved about being a law student at Pitt Law. So Kyle, could you start us off?
Sure, happy to do it. I would say, this sentiment has been expressed on this panel thus far, but just the community aspect of Pitt Law, I think was phenomenal. It's not a huge law school, and it's all in one building, and really like the physical layout of the school just really makes it accelerates the time that it takes for it to feel like a close-knit community. And it really did feel that way. I feel like I made some of my best friends in law school, which you're allowed to do outside of studying. And like Judge Bose said, the professors, when I was there, they're still very accessible and helpful. And it's kind of like the perfect mix between a a small community that feels easy to navigate, but also has a ton of resources. So really, like, I think that Pitt Law is just the perfect place to be able to help yourself, achieve your goals and get your career to where you want it to be. And also, just frankly, all the classes were extremely interesting, and there's a wide variety of, there's a lot of things on the practical end of the spectrum. But then if you just want to, stimulate your intellectual side, there's plenty of classes for that too, which I absolutely love that balance as well. So that's what I would say.
Oh, thanks, Kyle. So Elizabeth, what did you love about being a law student at Pitt?
Oh, so many things. So I loved Dean Deasy and Dean Burkhoff, which is just part of the supportive faculty and administration. They were so supportive. Whenever I was feeling like stressed or overwhelmed, I would just go to Dean Deasy's office and just kind of like vent and be like, and he would just very calmly sit there and, well, Elizabeth, and it was just great. And he would just let me, do that. And then I'd be like, okay, I'm good. All right, I'll see you next time. So that has not changed. The faculty and administration are so supportive. You've got people like Shar and Lori and, Allie. It's just, they're phenomenal. Mimi, they are so supportive. The professors and the faculty are so accomplished yet accessible. So that hasn't changed. There's so many opportunities. I want you to think about not just the academic part of it, but there's opportunities to really, get involved in organizations at the law school that, are in tune with what you're passionate about. Because part of, being in the legal profession is kind of, underlying passionate. We're all passionate about something. I think it's a kind of a thread that runs through folks who want to go to law school. There's something that you are, that's your thing. And so there's opportunities to find out, whether it's like the Student Bar Association. I was involved, as the treasurer and on student, a 1L rep, 2L rep. Also, I was in the Black Law Students Association. I was president of my graduating class in 2004. And so that was an opportunity. I got to speak at graduation. There's just, whatever, PLISIF, which is the public legal income sharing. So if you're interested in public interest, they have such a super strong public interest group, and they're so dedicated. And the school supports that, and there's a lot of support from alums to make sure that students who are interested in the public interest arena have that financial support to do what they love and to help folks in the community through their legal skills. The clinics, I cannot even tell you how fantastic the clinics are. We didn't have as many clinics when I was there, but the students who go through the clinics get just absolutely unparalleled experience. And that's such an opportunity to get hands-on experience and really learn about practicing law and actually doing it, and interacting with clients and learning how to counsel clients. It's priceless. And super professors who are heading up those clinics, and you can learn so much from those. So there's so many great things. Oakland is a great area. It's metropolitan. It's super close to downtown. You're right on the bus line, and there's great restaurants. There's great, places to hang out. We had bar review on Thursday nights, which was we'd hang out and go across the street to, Hemingway's or whatever. And so there was, opportunities for, kind of unwinding that collegiality as well. So there's a lot to love about Pitt Law and a lot to love about Pittsburgh.
Well, thanks, Elizabeth. So Morgan Moody, what did you most enjoy as a law student at Pitt? What did you value most?
So I think a lot of Kyle's and Elizabeth's comments will overlap, but I truly loved my year in the family law clinic. So after my first semester of my second year of law school, I had taken evidence my first semester so that I could become a certified legal intern and practice law, because I knew I wanted to be a litigator. I was going to be a trial attorney. I was going to be in a courtroom. I thought at the time I was going to be a DA, which is the furthest thing from like career path in my mind now. But I just knew that I was going to fight for the people. And in a way, I'm doing that currently in my current role. But I just loved that clinic. Professor Gruner is a treasure. He should be a national treasure. He's definitely a Pennsylvania treasure. And it was just a really good way to take all of the theory. So all of the, hours of studying and writing and learning that you're doing your first year, to be able to apply that practically. And so I know, I was an English major, so I was used to the Socratic method. I was used to four years essentially in undergrad of sitting in a room discussing what we were reading. But the hard thing for anyone who wants to be a litigator or do any kind of trial work or client driven work, direct client services, I was, anxious I was like, okay, well, when are we going to start like actually doing this? When are we going to start practicing law? And because you're a professional student, even though you're in law school, you already feel like a baby lawyer. I still feel like a baby lawyer, but so for me, that clinic allowed us to have, close supervision, hands-on client work. So I was meeting with clients, I was interviewing clients, I was drafting custody complaints and presenting motions in court under the supervision of a licensed attorney, but I actually felt like I was lawyering. And I participated in the clinic my second semester of my second year into the fall of my third year of law school. And over that summer, I interned with legal services, with neighborhood legal services. So I had already felt like I had a leg up some of my fellow interns because I had done that work. So when there was an attorney in the office who said, well, does anyone want to try writing some preliminary objections or file an answer to a complaint? I was ready to go because I had been in motions court. I had already been in front of a judge. I wasn't nervous about standing in front of a judge with other attorneys. I remember the first time a judge made us go on the record for a motion, I almost had a panic attack because I was like, well, I'm not a lawyer yet. I don't want a transcript of what I'm going to say. But it just, that type of close networking, and especially with other law students the people I worked with in that clinic, I still know, I still see, virtually now, but would see in the legal community, in the courtroom. And so it's already sort of building your legal career, which is what you're here to do. You're here to get a phenomenal legal education, but also it really is, from day one at orientation, the beginning of your legal career. And so for me, I love that because I was wearing a suit and I was going to court and I was a lawyer my second year of law school. And just to add on, I really had a fantastic time in law school because I feel like I made some of the best friendships that I still have. So, my undergrad experience was amazing. And if anyone asked me, I love William and Mary. My heart bleeds green and gold. Allie Linsenmeyer can tell you countless, great things about William and Mary. But, for college, I think that's where you're kind of finding yourself in undergrad and you move on and you all do different things and you have different career trajectories. But everyone in law school has the same goal. Even if you're in different practice areas, you all want to become licensed attorneys and practice the law in some form of fashion. And so it's really an opportunity to meet individuals with similar goals, even if you're not as like-minded. And I just love the people I went to law school with, inviting them to my wedding a year after I graduated from law school. The mentors that I got who are fellow Pitt Law alums, who I met Elizabeth and then saw her at another event. And she said, oh, come meet them, meet these people. And now this is why I'm still in Pittsburgh 6 years later, because I have just such a good network of friends and now extended family.
Well, that's just so powerful, Morgan. And there's so much in what you said that really resonates with me too, in terms of my own law school experience and frankly, my lived experience since then. And I want to also explain to all the admitted students today that this opportunity to interface with alumni begins this early and it continues throughout your career at Pitt Law. Pitt Law places a huge emphasis on creating opportunities for current students to meet and interact with alumni. And we do that beginning even now, before you even matriculated at the law school, and it continues throughout your 3 years here, in that we have mentoring opportunities that are presented to you as early as your first year, networking opportunities, gatherings with alumni, opportunities to interface with them in presentations sponsored by the Professional Development Office, in which they're sharing more insights about their careers, opportunities to collaborate with the Bar Association here in Allegheny County, where again, you will be meeting even more alumni. And we do that because as a law school, we appreciate the richness of that connection and how being connected to alumni, even as a law student, can benefit you as a law student, and how remaining connected with your fellow alumni can assist you as a lawyer. And so I wanted to transition a bit. And Elizabeth, if we could start with you, can you tell us a bit about perhaps how connecting with alumni assisted you as a law student and how it has actually continued to assist you as an attorney?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the alumni base here is so strong, and it has been just invaluable to my career. Just the support that I've gotten from Pitt alums, and actually, I've worked for Pitt alums. Pitt alums have hired me to do jobs. We have a lot of Pitt alums where I work right now. When I mentioned about being an assistant solicitor at Allegheny County, the solicitor at that time was Mike Wojcik, who is now a Commonwealth Court judge. And he hired me in my interview. So, I mean, I think that, that Pitt Law tie, when you see another Pitt Law grad, how they were prepared, where they came from, they're going to be fit into this career, this office, this team. And I think that was one of the things, that really stood out and helped me. And he's a mentor to this day. And anytime, I need a reference or have a question, I can just pick up the phone. His number's in my cell phone. I can call him. Judge Bose. She's a huge mentor and support to Pitt alums. She's there, she's accessible, and she's, supportive. Her classmate, Mary Sue Ramsden, I worked for her at Rayfield Ramsden and Beer. She hired me, after meeting me at Bench Bar Conference and finding out, hey, you do family law and you teach family law too. And that's that conversation, that Pitt Law connection is always there. And I try my best to pay it forward and try to stay super involved with the students and get to know students every year. You'll see me at events at the law school and hopefully in person at some point soon. And we can interact. But that time at Morgan, I met her at a speed networking event at the law school I think you were 2L. I think, Morgan, were you 2L at the time? And she was so impressive. And, I was just so happy to find a young lady, particularly of color, that wanted to be a family law attorney. So I just snatched her and I was like, I'm keeping you here with me. So, I think that this network of Pitt Law alum is so strong, and it's not just here. We have alums all over the country, all over the world. So there's huge, pockets of alums out, Philly, New York, DC. We have alums on the West Coast. We have alums overseas. We have 2 alums who are at Microsoft. One who's a very good friend of mine, Randy Johnson, who was here behind me, just got hired, and Elke Suber has been there for years. So we've got a Pitt Law alum connection at Microsoft. we've got Pitt Law in network everywhere, and the all you have to do is pick up the phone, shoot an email, and the alums are super supportive, and we're going to help out however we can. But it's been a huge help to me in my career, and like I said, that Pitt Law on my resume is just priceless.
You know, and Elizabeth, it's very fitting that you're talking about sort of the geographic reach of a Pitt Law degree, because Shar, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you said this morning that we have admitted students attending today from many, many states across the country, and two attending today's presentation from outside of the United States. Did I remember that correctly? Yep.
That's great.
Proof is in the pudding.
Yeah, we have a reach.
We're everywhere. That's right. It's a good thing, though. It's a good thing. So, Judge Bowes, you know, both as a practicing attorney and even once you ascended to the bench, how has being connected with your fellow alumni assisted you?
Well, you know, going back to when I was in law school, we didn't have a lot of clinics at the time, but we did have externships. So while I was at law school, I did an externship at Neighborhood Legal Services, which provides legal services to low-income folks. I also did an externship at the Public Defender's Office and then also at the District Attorney's Office. And in both of those offices, I worked in the appellate division. So you can see the trajectory of my career did align with those externships. But in all of those, it gave me an opportunity, as Morgan was saying, to immediately begin to develop those connections to the legal profession, to meet with clients, and to get a real sense of what is involved in appellate work, both from the defense side and the prosecution side. And in all of those experiences, many of the the attorneys that I was working with were Pitt graduates. So it really gives you an opportunity to get a leg up on your career, to start dipping your toe into the legal waters, as Morgan was talking about. And I did take advantage of that. And I did feel like that was an invaluable part of my law school experience. When I was at the district attorney's office, I was provided with the opportunity to advocate before the Board of Pardons, where the lieutenant governor sits. And so even though, even to this day, law students cannot argue before the appellate courts, although hopefully that rule will be changing soon, but it did provide me with an opportunity to experience a little bit of appellate argument. So I was grateful for those. But you just make such great friends, as all of the panelists have been talking about, and to this day, I am still very close with so many of those. But what it does, and I think Kyle was talking about this earlier. So if you intend to stay in Pittsburgh and practice in Pittsburgh, back when I went to law school, I think we had over 200 in our class. So you graduate and you have an immediate circle of influence in the legal profession, because the majority of those folks go right downtown and start working. So pretty soon you have a friend at Reed Smith who's doing M&A work. If you have a question about that, you just call Kyle. Kyle, how do you do this? What's going on? So that was, I found that to be very helpful when I moved into practice. And, you know, you help each other out. You know, one of your friends who graduated with you hears of a job opening and then they call you up. And so I found those connections to be very helpful throughout my entire career. And Pitt always had an excellent career services office, which I always stayed in touch with. Back then, can you imagine we would get mail by snail mail? That was how we would hear from. That was it. That's what we had, but it still worked. But Pitt, I think my point is Pitt is just really easy to remain connected to. And I think I'm proof of that, because after 42 years, I am still connected to the law school, still deeply interested in not only how it's functioning, but the experience that the students are having while there. And I and a lot of my fellow alums go back into the classroom whenever we can, or to meet with, to work with, or to mentor law students. I constantly have a law student working in my chambers, and I intentionally go to Pitt and say, let's, want to provide this opportunity to Pitt law students, because that is my background, that is my heritage. So I invite the Pitt law students to come into chambers and to work for academic credit. We have usually one paid summer internship. And again, I try and hire Pitt law students for that. And I invite any of the folks who are on the call today, when you start at Pitt Law School, please feel free to reach out to me and, touch base with me. I try and remain in touch with anybody who reaches out to me. I like to serve as a resource for those students in any way I can. So I think our alums really go the extra mile for Pitt, and it's a significant advantage, I think, to practice law in the city where you went to law school.
That's very true.
Lori, and I just wanted to, if I could just, draw attention to the fact that we have a significant number of women judges who are Pitt Law alums, and it is phenomenal being in meetings with them, having them mentor and available, and just seeing them and knowing that pathway, to the bench is there. And even just in Judge Bo's class, like there's several. So
there were 5 judges from my class.
Just from her class. And they're all women, correct?
We had a couple men.
Got a couple. But we have a fantastic array of judges that come from Pitt Law. And so they are always so open to mentoring and hiring and having, Pitt Law students working in their chambers. And it's a great experience.
Morgan Moody, how did interacting with alumni while you were a student help you? And how has it helped you as a practicing attorney?
So I think I've touched on it a little bit throughout the several times I've spoken today, but I mean, the biggest way is just the mentorship. For me, I'm the first lawyer within my family. And so not really having a clue, as I said, I thought I was going to be a DA and had no idea what that all entails. I'll just say that. And it was totally not a good fit for me. But having the ability to speak one-on-one with practitioners who had been in your shoes not too long ago, and also to have a guiding hand. So, I mean, I cannot tell you how many times I've called Elizabeth and said, I have this opportunity. What do you think? Or, I have this opportunity. I need a letter of recommendation. Can you provide do you know someone? So just being able to have that guidance, because it's so important. And I think for the lawyers that are coming out today have so many more jobs than, that was the one thing that we kept hearing when I was in law school, is that most new attorneys now have more jobs than in previous years, where typically someone would graduate and go to a firm and maybe stay there for 10, 15 years. And so with that much job changing, I think it's really important just to have someone who you can go to and speak to and get that advice, and who's going to have your best interest too. Because I will say the alumni who I met as a law student, who I continue to interact with, who are a part of my network now, are invested. When they say call me, they mean call me. They don't give you their number just, as a formality. And they also come back and you see them time and time again. So you also develop that comfort level of, oh, I met her at the speed networking event and I talked to her and she was really, and now you feel comfortable going up to that individual in a group of other attorneys and practitioners and judges. So for me, I cannot underscore how much every door that I think has been opened for me has come from someone else who attended Pitt Law before me, who stepped through it or opened it for me on my behalf. I mean, the school going to Pitt Law gave me the tools I needed to get there, and allowed me to my name to roll across someone's desk. But I have definitely had guardian angels in my corner who have helped me get to where I am. And I am really happy with even the short career that I've had, how it has gone.
And Kyle, by any chance, are you also joined by a pussycat there at your desk? Because it looks like you might have some type of animal, maybe. I don't know.
What do you mean?
I thought it looked like you were stroking something, and I was wondering if we might have.
Oh no, I was just
today's
I guess
luncheon.
fidgeting with my hands. Sorry about
Oh, that's all right. That's all right.
Must be
'Cause I always-
distracting.
No, because Elizabeth knows that if there's an animal present, I insist they fully participate in the
Pets, our
No,
pets
I wish.
participate fully in our Zoom calls.
Well, Kyle, how about you? Has interfacing with alumni assisted you both as a student and since?
Yes, it has, and I think that the other panelists really covered a lot of ground on this, and just I think for the sake of time, the one point that I would add would just be, as an incoming student, you might think, okay, that that's great that alumni are so willing to help, and it's such a great network, but like where do I start? The answer to that is that the law school says, here you go. Here's event after event after event where, willing alumni attend them, and all you have to do is show up, and you get plenty of reminders. It's very, very easy. So you just have to go. And, the alumni that go to those events are excited to be there and happy to help. And I would just add that the law school really helps, it's the best conduit for that connection between student and alumni. So
that's so true. So I'm watching the clock here, and we wanted to be able to be sure to devote time to questions that any of the admitted students might have for anyone or everyone on the panel. So I wanted to open it up to the admitted students and see if you had questions you'd like to pose. Let's see, it looks like Rob Hardison has a question. Hi, Rob.
Hello, everyone. This question, I think, would be more tailored toward Kyle. So for sake of context, I'm starting the JD MBA program at Pitt this fall with the goal of hopefully working in corporate law and doing something similar to what you're doing. And I was curious, if and how you kind of tailored your studies in your second and third year towards that type of law, if you knew that's what you wanted to do. And then additionally, how you spent your summers, and especially with the joint program, I'll have an extra summer thrown in there. So just, trying to get an understanding of how I can best utilize my time throughout the program to hopefully get to that point. Thank you.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that is, obviously a good goal. So I think specifically, I'm not sure, I think the law school still has this class, but there's a legal writing for the transactional lawyer class, which I thought was incredible, just in the way that it clearly explained the basics of what the actual details of doing transactional work would be, as opposed to just kind of the subject matter that it's, business or finance related. That was really, really helpful. There's some other classes in the law school that would be good to take just to get some exposure to tax, for example, and obviously business organizations, which is it is a litigation class, but it's important to learn about how businesses are organized and the different ways that they're governed and by the owners or the managers and how all that stuff works. I'm sure that you'll get a ton of business subject matter exposure in your MBA classes. I would just say in law school, just, don't forget about just taking stuff that interests you, because law school is, it's a great experience by itself as well. And then I would just add in the summer, maybe one of the summers try to do something that's not business related. The one summer I interned for Judge Hardiman in the Court of Appeals, which was really interesting and a great intellectual experience, great experience with the law as my first, kind of outside of law school experience. But I think that you can get some exposure to that. And then, after that, there was really just, my summer associate program at Reed Smith, which I went into. So I think that you have the right idea about trying to set yourself up to achieve your goal. I think Pitt has plenty of opportunities to do that. I would also be open to trying some other things too, because even if you do end up being a corporate lawyer, it will make you a better corporate lawyer.
Well, thank you. Great question, Rob. And thanks, Kyle. Are there other questions that anybody would like to pose to the panel? I'm just checking through here. Feel free to shout them out.
Cindy has a question.
Oh,
or at least on my
so
screen, I
much.
see her hand raised.
Cindy, thank you so much.
Yeah, so this is a general question, but is there anything that you all wish you knew before law school, or just like a misconception that you had and you wish that somebody would have told you before you started?
I can answer that, and it kind of ties into what Kyle was saying. I was told, make sure you take all the classes that are on the bar exam. And that was terrible advice, frankly. I think that, law school it's a difficult endeavor, and it's more difficult if you are not really interested or invested in the classes that you're taking. So while you want to make sure, you're going to get your basics, you're going to get your solid, everything, your evidence and your property and con law. Those are going to be classes that you're going to get that foundation. So when you're talking about your second and third year and having opportunities to take things that might be of interest to you, take them, right? So that's one way you find out maybe what you thought you wanted to do when you came into law school really isn't what you really wanted to do, and you take some class and you love it, or you participate in a clinic that you really didn't think that was something you were interested in, and you find out you love it, or you participate in a clinic of something you swore that was like your end career goal, and then you find out I don't really like doing that. So I would say, be really open and take things that interest you, because it will make law school just a much better experience. And I ended up taking classes that I hated, and then some of them didn't even end up, they got rid of like secure transactions on the bar exam, so I took that horrible class for no reason. So take some things that you're really interested in, or that you hear great things about, the professor, those classes, when you have an opportunity to take, a professor that is just a leader in their field and a great teacher, those are classes that you might not think you're interested in, and they make it interesting.
Well, and just to piggyback off of that, I think Elizabeth covered it completely, but it wasn't something that I didn't know before attending. It was something that through orientation and every Pitt Law Academy, where attorneys were coming back to the school to share their experiences, I kept hearing, keep an open mind about what you want to do. So even if you have a focus, the whole point of taking classes in different areas in your second and third years and really exposing yourselves to all different types of law, I think is something that can't be underscored, because I had a classmate in the family law clinic who thought she was going to do family law and went into transactional work and was like, I can't deal with other people's problems. She's like, it's exhausting. She's like, why do you want to do this? And that's really great though, that she learned that her second year, because you don't want to, have this dead set, or mindset that you have to do something. So take advantage And then I would also say just get a good study group, because it is, the whole point is to come out with a good education. And although you're forward thinking about your career, you do want to have a good foundation for what you're learning. And my study group, my second year, was extremely beneficial. I mean, my classmate taught me criminal law and Fourth Amendment law just by like talking it out. So that can't be underscored. I think Adrian.
Morgan. Adrian.
Yeah, hi. So I just had a question that kind of piggybacked off of Cindy's. So I've heard from alumni of various schools that just the learning style of law school and 1L in particular is just very different from undergrad per se. So would any of you have any recommendations for just how to best prepare for sort of throwing yourself into 1L, learning terms, all of that lovely stuff?
Wow.
I just think it's like the whole point is to change how you think. I mean, I think that's the point of law school is they, undergrad, get your mind ready for grad school pretty much. But law school takes that mind from your undergraduate institution and breaks it down. At least for me, it did, broke me down and then builds you back up to how you need, some points it was touch and go there, but, and it really shapes you so that you're thinking like a lawyer, because that's what you have to do. I mean, I'm sure Kyle can really, the amount of time it takes you to read your first contracts case, your first, your summer reading for your first contracts class versus your second year of law school, the speed with which you can read it and understand it and comprehend it in a way that the professor wants you to and engage with the material. I mean, even the way that I look at research now and the learning curve is so steep. What I knew first semester of law school compared to what I knew my last semester of law school to my first year in practice to now. So, I mean, that's my opinion. I don't really know how because they're going to pick out everything that
you get reprogrammed.
I mean, it really,
I did go home and burst into tears after the first day of law school. So I thought, I don't know what these people are talking about. I didn't understand every other word was some weird word. I thought I would never capture this language. So you have to be gentle on yourself, because Morgan's exactly right. It's just a different way of thinking. So you just work hard and do the homework and, outline the cases. And it's not brain surgery. You'll get it. Trust me. It's just a focused way of thinking. So be gentle.
And maintain your relationships with your family members, or like find that group of friends in school, because when you're having those days where you're like, this is insane, you need to just step away and have, like the best thing is that my spouse is not a lawyer. So when I was in law school and I was, the days that I was unhappy, I could call him and talk about nothing related to the law.
These are words of wisdom.
I do have
you get there.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kyle. And then we have a final question from Alex that we want to get to.
I would just, as a counter to that, I would say, don't overthink your studying habits or, how you take notes in class. Like you've been a student before. I would trust yourself in terms of generally like the tools that you use to pay attention and remember information. And the knowledge will come. I would just say, you just got to just dig in and take it one step at a time. But definitely trust yourself and, don't overthink the process. Just, sit down and do the work as best you can.
That's wonderful. Alex, you have a question before we end up signing off.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks so much, Lori. And thanks to all the panelists. Morgan had mentioned like in passing transactional law, and that is, going into law school. That's what I'm most interested in right now. I know that might change. I currently work as a legal assistant at a music law firm doing transactional law. And I guess my two questions are this, like, I want to study law in Pittsburgh. I don't know if there are opportunities in entertainment law in Pittsburgh. So my question is if you know of any, and then the other is just more generally copyright law, if you know any attorneys who practice copyright law in the Pittsburgh area, in any other area.
So, I mean, I'm happy to say that in Pittsburgh, there are certainly attorneys who practice in every range of intellectual property law, whether it be copyright, whether it be patents, whether it be trademarks, or frankly, IP related litigation. Certainly as with other industries, there are cities in the country where there are likely a greater concentration of folks who are doing that kind of work. And those are the ones, Alex, that I'm sure you're aware of, whether it be Washington, D.C., Boston, Chicago, LA, et cetera. But there are wonderful opportunities here in Pittsburgh for that type of work. We have a strong alumni network in that regard. And the Professional Development Office also facilitates students' participation in the Loyola Clinic in Chicago, which is the interview clinic that is conducted annually, and Pitt Law students attend it every year. And again, that's facilitated through the Professional Development Office. But I would also say that intellectual property is a wonderful example of an area where it would behoove you as a law student and as a practitioner to continue to identify and reach out to alumni in that area. So you'd be joining a very rich alumni community in that regard, both from a private law practice as well as in-house perspective. And so you'll be in good company.
There are a couple people who I know who are in that. We have, IP stuff that comes up at UPMC, and Tracy Barringer, who's a Pitt Law alum. She is our IP person. And then there's also as that kind of entertainment / like sports law kind of area, which, there's some overlap in that. Eddie Edwards, who's also Pitt Law. I think he graduated in 2000. He does a lot of that work. I think he's at Blank Room. And Jackie Walker, I know she was in New York for a while, and I think she did some work for like CBS. So there's some folks, in that area in Pittsburgh who do some of that work. Absolutely.
Well, thank you once again to all the admitted students for coming today. We really do hope that you learned something and benefited from the insights of our brilliant alumni panelists, who I would like to thank. Once again, a huge thank you to Judge Mary Jane Bowes, to President Elizabeth Hughes, to Mr. Kyle Higgins, and to Ms. Morgan Moody. You should all know that when I reached out to each one of them to inquire if they might be willing to participate today, I got the same answer I get every single time I reach out to a Pitt Law alumni, which is, of course, I would love to. That doesn't happen at every law school. So thank you so much to our alumni panelists and students. I understand that you're now going to be able to enjoy a break until 2:00 when you'll come back for the faculty panel. I'm so glad you're going to get to meet more faculty this afternoon. They are the backbone of this school. They are every bit as phenomenal as you have heard them to be. This is a faculty of international scholarly impact. They are utterly brilliant to a person. And I will say the other thing that I've always said, one of the most unique things about Pitt Law is the fact that in order to become a faculty member here, you have to excel both at academic scholarship and teaching. You can't just do one really well. You have to do both. So you're about to meet some phenomenal teachers this afternoon, and I hope you enjoy that. Enjoy your break, everybody, and thanks so much to Charmaine McCall and Allie Linsenmeyer and Mimi Jeffries for the opportunity to chat today. Thank you.
Welcome back, everybody. We have our second faculty panel here. My name is Mimi Jeffries. I know many of you have heard from me via email and different events throughout the admission cycle. I am here to moderate the second faculty panel. I am going to go ahead and let the faculty members introduce themselves. If you have questions after the introductions, go ahead and raise your hand and I will let you go ahead and ask your questions. I will go ahead. I see first on my screen, Professor Harris. If you want to go ahead and start and introduce yourself, and then we'll go around and let every faculty member introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me okay? All right, great. I'm David Harris. I am the Sally Ann Semenko Professor of Law at the University of Pittsburgh School of Law. It's very good to be with you. I'm also a podcaster for the Criminal Injustice Podcast, created here within the law school 5 years ago. My teaching areas are criminal law, which everybody takes in their first year, criminal procedure, which almost everybody takes in their second, as well as evidence. And I get to teach a seminar every year as well. My particular areas of concentration and expertise as far as my research, my writing, and my service activities within Pittsburgh and nationally involve police activity and behavior, search and seizure law, police accountability, and all of the issues that you've heard so much about in the last year. And before that, I've been working on those issues for 25 to 30 years. And what I love about being here at Pitt are the wonderful faculty who are very dedicated to teaching, who do the job of teaching in ways that exceed anything I've seen at any of the other schools I've taught at. And the fact that we're in an environment at a university and in a city where anything you want to get interested in and do something about is possible. That has been a wonderful thing. I'm a person who likes to apply my work out in the field to work with policymakers, and for me, it's police, it's prosecutors, it's defenders, it's people in the community, and I've had a chance to do all of that. So I thank Mimi and Charmaine for the invitation today, and I'm very glad to be with my fellow faculty members, Professor Crosley and Professor Pearson Brown. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Harris. Professor Crosley, would you like to introduce?
Sure, I'm happy to. I'm glad to be here today as well, and glad to see so many students participating. My name is Mary Crossley. I'm a professor here at the law school as well. This is actually the third law school that I have taught at. So if anyone is interested in comparisons, I can offer some. I have taught many of the classes that you will take during your first year of law school. I've taught contracts, I've taught legislation and regulation. I currently teach tort law, but my main area of expertise and really the field that I have taught throughout my time in law teaching is healthcare law. And so I teach healthcare law. I teach with the basic survey course. I teach a specialized course called Current Issues in Health Law. I actually teach an undergraduate course here at Pitt in the Honors College called Health Justice. And it is a course that really aligns with my the areas that I write about and research in, which have to do with health injustice and how the law responds or fails to respond in many cases to instances of inequity in how people experience health in the United States. The other thing that I do is I am also the director of the healthcare law or health law program here at Pitt Law. And that involves a number of different things. Certainly any student who comes to Pitt Law is free to take classes relating to health law, and I encourage you all to do that. But the other thing is that a number of students decide that they want to pursue a health law certificate, which permits them to specialize in health law. And this is, Pitt Law has one of the oldest health law certificate programs in the United States. It's particularly strong because we have partnerships and access to UPMC and the Health Sciences School at Pitt. We have decades worth of alums on whom we rely to help teach students at Pitt Law and to help students network and find jobs in the health law field, which is a pretty huge field considering that about $1 in every $5 or $6 in the United States goes towards health care in one way or the other. I also am the faculty director for the joint JD and Masters of Public Health program, which provides students an opportunity to earn 2 degrees at the same time in an integrated fashion, and to spend less time and less money than if they earn those degrees separately. So that's another area where, if you have any interest in joint degrees, I'd be happy to talk with you. I will echo what Professor Harris said about the opportunities both at Pitt, being in a large research university, but also within Pittsburgh. You know, I moved here, more than 15 years ago now, and it is a community where it's very easy to become involved in the community, and that's a real great thing for law students in particular. So I'll stop there. Look forward to your questions, and so glad that you're with us today.
Thank you, Professor Crossley. Dean Pearson-Brown, would you like to go ahead and introduce?
Yes, thank you. So I'm really excited to be here with all of you today. I'm Dean Pearson-Brown. I'm the Associate Dean for Equity and Inclusive Excellence here at Pitt Law. The Office of Equity and Inclusive Excellence has a dual focus that's reflected in the title of the office, right? So we're focused on equity, which is thinking about the structures of the law school, making sure that it's accessible to students from a variety of backgrounds, whether you're a student of color, you're a first-generation law student, you're a veteran law student, you're a parent law student. We want to make sure that the structure of the law school is set up in a way that makes it accessible to you for all of the benefits that the law school has to offer, be those law review opportunities, be those professional development opportunities, be those community engagement opportunities. We're also really invested in developing the inclusive climate of the law school, right? So how do students feel welcomed and supported in their classroom environment, in their social activities, in their relationships with the local bar? So we have a series of activities that the Office of Equity and Inclusive Excellence is responsible for that target the equity issues within the law school, as well as inclusion issues in the law school. And when we have our Q&A panel, I'm happy to answer further questions about the work of OEIE, or the Office of Equity and Inclusive Excellence. I also wear a second hat as a clinical professor, associate clinical professor of law at Pitt Law. I direct the Health Law Clinic, which is a medical legal partnership clinic between the law school and Children's Hospital. So medical legal partnerships, if you're not familiar with this practice model, actually have lawyers at the site of care. And so we have law students who are working at different pediatric clinics through Pittsburgh's Children's Hospital to provide legal screening, brief advice, and in several cases, direct representation for low-income families who have a legal issue that intersects with the healthcare need that they're seeking for their child. The Health Law Clinic is one of 7 clinical programs that Pitt offers. We have a family law clinic, we have a securities and arbitration clinic, we have a low-income taxpayer clinic, we have an immigration clinic, we have an environmental law clinic, we have an elder law clinic. So there are a lot of different practice areas that you might be interested in exploring, and our in-house legal clinics are a really great way to do that while you're in law school. In the second semester of your 2L year, you'll be eligible to register as a certified legal intern. And that allows you to do many of the functions that a licensed attorney can do under the supervision of your professor, who is also a licensed practicing attorney. So you'll have real one-on-one client experience. The in-house clinics occupy the 4th floor of the Barco Law Building. And when you have an opportunity to see the physical space, you'll see that it looks like a law office and it runs like a law office, because it is a real law office in which you get to manage a caseload, make decisions about the direction of the case, represent your client in court or in an administrative proceeding, and get the experience of what lawyers do on a daily basis as you're learning and as you're deciding what career path you want to take. So I'm looking forward to our Q&A session. I'm happy to answer questions about clinical education or experiential learning. I'm also happy to speak to you about the work that Pitt is doing to live up to its commitment to equity, inclusion, and social justice.
Thank you, Dean Pearson-Brown. I am going to go ahead and open it up to questions. If you have a question, please feel free to go ahead and use the option to raise your hand in the reactions down at the bottom, and I'll go ahead and call on you if you have questions, or you could raise your hand in the chat. I don't see any questions yet. Let's see.
It looks like Aubrey.
Aubrey, ahead. Aubrey, go ahead.
Hi, I had a question regarding the joint degree programs with, like, I know there's the public health one and there's also like the bioethics one. So I was kind of wondering maybe why you might, like, how the two sort of diverge and why you might choose one over the other.
Yeah, so good question. And actually, you know, the law school has a good number of different joint degree programs with the School of Social Work, with the Graduate School of Public and International Affairs. There are, I think, more than 10 joint degree programs now. There are two that are health related, as you said, the bioethics one and the public health one. And when I'm talking to students about trying to decide, like, between those two and whether joint degrees similarly just generally are a good idea, I like to say that, you know, and they also might say, well, should I do the health law certificate or should I do a joint degree? Well, the health law certificate is best for people who really know they want to practice law and they want to represent clients who are somehow involved in the healthcare kind of ecosystem, whether those are providers like hospitals or doctors, or maybe they're payers like insurance companies, or maybe they're patients, right? And so it's kind of like focusing your legal expertise on that area. Joint degrees are more for people who think, wow, I really want to be able to practice law. I want to have a law degree, but I want to have a career, or at least I think I may want to have a career that's at the intersection of law and another discipline or profession. And so when you think about what those two different joint degrees intersect with public health, having the joint JD MPH positions graduates well for jobs that are more related to making policy, jobs in the government, for example. We have a number of graduates who have positions in the federal government. Some of them have positions in large health systems, helping not only consider, evaluate legal concerns, but also how the systems are administered. A number of graduates are in actually consulting firms that help consult with health systems on how to set up their health systems to be administered in an efficient and legal and ethical fashion. And then, you know, some students will graduate with a joint degree and go on to practice law, but really the kind of sweet spot is the intersection. And so when you think about the intersection with law and bioethics, students who graduate with that joint degree are more likely to work with health systems to advise them internally on ethical issues. They may also be students who are interested in working with kind of patient advocacy types of organizations, or perhaps they may be interested in academic careers. But certainly I think you can think of the MPH as being better, joint degree as being better suited for students who are more interested kind of at the higher level, policy-oriented health systems administration level, whereas the bioethics really thinks more about the implications of healthcare for individual patients. So I hope that is helpful some.
Thank you, Professor Crossley. I saw that Mandy had a question.
Hi. Well, she kind of answered my question. I was about to ask the same thing about the joint degree, but another question I had was, Dean Pearson Brown, when you go to like the health clinics, you're talking about the health clinic, of which I'm pretty interested in. Like, what are the internships that we would be expected to do if we wanted to go through that clinic?
Thank you, Mandy, for that question. I want to make sure that I'm clear there's a distinction between doing one of Pitt's in-house legal clinics and doing an internship that might be law related to your future professional career. So the in-house clinics are courses that you would sign up for credit. So there's a graduation requirement that you would obtain up to 6 credits of experiential learning, which you can do through an externship, which might be work with a firm or with a nonprofit for credit, or by registering for one of the in-house legal clinics the same way you would register for any other of your classes and earning your experiential credit that way. Students in the health law clinic through the medical legal partnership with Children's take a seminar during which I will teach you the areas of law that we practice in the clinic, which are special education law. We do advocacy in Social Security, so we do SSI benefits cases, and we represent families seeking guardianship of their adult children. And we're going to start pioneering with some housing conditions cases in partnership with Children's High Risk Asthma Clinic. So the seminar is one part. What is the law that I need to know in order to practice and begin representing clients? One part of the seminar is skills-based. So what do I need to learn to really do an effective initial client interview? How do I take a deposition? What are some hard skills that I need to learn in order to engage in the practice areas? And then I'm really interested in how law functions as a social determinant of health. So part of the reasons why one might engage in medical legal partnership practice is because we recognize the impact of social determinants of health on public health outcomes. And so what is the role of law in social determinants? And so there's this sort of theoretical piece where we really get into how law functions to promote as well as upend some of these long-term trends in health outcome disparities that we can witness statistically. So you'll take that course, and in addition to having seminar, you'll actually staff one of the clinics at Children's Hospital by screening families, working alongside physicians to address client needs. And then any cases that come into the clinic, we represent to term. So if this is a family that has a guardianship, you're going to file the petition, you're going to represent them in court and see the hearing through. And all of the clinics are set up that way, where there's a seminar component where you do some classroom learning, and then there's the real world work that you do on behalf of your client. So I hope that that answers your question, Mandy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have 3 other questions. I have Gwyneth, Marissa, and then Cindy. So Gwyneth, you want to go ahead and answer?
Hi, thank you. So I think this question is directed towards Professor Harris. I have taken 3 courses in criminal law, criminal procedure, and evidence in my undergrad. So I'm really interested in criminal law. And if I remember correctly, Pitt has a criminal law and justice specialization. So I was just wondering, what are some of the strengths of that program? And if you feel like it's a really good kind of starting point for post-grad work.
Thank you for that question, Gwyneth. I think it is a good starting point. We have all of the usual kinds of offerings that you would expect at Pitt, and then we can add to those some highly specialized offerings. We have had a practicum in criminal defense. We have had the criminal procedure 2 course. There are 2 courses in criminal procedure. My main one is about police investigations. So it's arrest, search and seizure, interrogations, identifications, grand jury practice, things like that. So it's all prior to trial and charge. And then there's a second course that moves from the bail stage all the way through conviction and appeal. We have also had seminars on capital punishment, wrongful conviction, forensics, you name it. Then to layer on top of that, we have a real array of opportunities, like I said, within Pittsburgh. Those range from people regularly interning and externing at the public defender's office, our county prosecutor's office, our United States Attorney's office. The United States Attorney for Western District of Pennsylvania is located here. and any number of other places in which people have paying jobs as law clerks, but they do criminal defense oriented work here in Pittsburgh. So the opportunities are many, and the size of the city and frankly the market is such that you can actually get yourself some decent experience, either by assisting a lawyer in practice, by, as Dean Pearson Brown was saying, being a certified legal intern, working at the public defender's office or the prosecutor's office. So when people come out of the school, if they have a definite interest in criminal law, they can be satisfied that they'll have all the basics plus a lot more. And then there are opportunities to do research, to do other kinds of work within the school.
Thank you.
Thank you,
You're
Professor.
welcome.
Marissa, you want to ask your question?
Sure, thank you. Hello. My question, I'm not sure if anyone here can speak to it. So if there are other resources or other people that I could reach out to, please let me know. But my research focuses a lot on surveillance technology and facial recognition and the dangers of it. I'm wondering if there are any programs, any classes that specifically focus on this issue and maybe as it relates to immigration.
Yeah, I can't speak to how it relates to immigration, but I can see the connection as soon as you said it, I could see it. I've done some work with facial recognition in conjunction with Pitt's the Cyber Institute. We were one of the first universities to set up a separate cyber institute. It is headed by the former United States Attorney for the Western District of Pennsylvania, David Hickton, who is also one of our very distinguished alums. And in its short existence, just 2 or 3 years, it has done so much to address many of the cyber adjacent issues. I'm on a task force right now with them about public algorithms, the use of algorithms in public agencies, be they child custody, criminal sentencing, probation, you name it. That's a way that you could get direct experience studying something like facial recognition. I've also done some work on facial recognition with individual students. I follow the issue myself very carefully because facial recognition very much comes within the bucket to me of government surveillance, which is really what search and seizure under the Fourth Amendment is about. But it has characteristics that both put it in that bucket and take it out of it. It is one of the technologies I'm watching very closely because I think it's going to shape the way we act, think, and work with each other in times ahead, both for better, but mostly, in my not so optimistic opinion, for worse. I don't have a good feeling about it, where it's going and how unregulated it is. So this is the kind of thing that when, say, a student comes to me and says, I'm looking for a topic for a law review article, I'm interested in search and seizure, I would say, have you thought about facial recognition? Listen to my podcast, episode 33. I've got Alvaro Badallo on that one. There are all kinds of ways to attack this. It is so new that along with things like stingray technology, other kinds of biometric identification, and new types of eavesdropping and so forth, it is going to remake the way that we think about surveillance. And woe be unto us as lawyers and law school if we're not thinking ahead of it. If we're just following behind as the court cases drop on us, we're not going to have the world we want. We have to think about, what do we want our world to be like? Not, well, here's how it is, I guess we have to accept it. So that's kind of how I view it.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Cindy, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, so my question is for Professor Crossley. I am interested in the joint JD-MPH program, and I have a meeting on Monday actually with Professor Van Nostrand to just talk about the details from the public health graduate school side. So hypothetically, if I were interested in continuing my academic study in public health and turn it into a PhD, because there is a public health graduate school at Pitt, would that transition be smooth, or how exactly would that work if you know of a possibility?
That's a great question, and I would love to see you do that. We have not previously had a student who did the joint JD MPH and then went on to get the PhD on the public health side. The way I anticipate that it would work would be that you would do the JD MPH and you would receive those degrees and then simply would complete your work on the PhD on the public health side, because that would be fully within their realm of granting credit and granting the degree. You know, depending on what that looks like from the public health side, it might mean that, you know, conceivably it could affect your path on the JD side, really just in terms of how long you take to complete the JD, right? If you wanted to get more of the public health work towards the PhD under your belt more quickly, that might delay completing the JD, but it wouldn't change kind of what you had to complete from the law school side in terms of being able to get the JD as part of the joint degree. And while there are some limits on how long you can hang out in law school without getting your JD, which nobody really tests, you would still have ample time if you wanted to adjust your schedule some to accommodate that interest.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I figured that it would probably be a relatively easy transition, hopefully, with the master's, because it is all in that same school.
I think it would depend as well. It's the joint degrees with the Department of Health Policy and Management. So I think that would be a question as well.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Alex, you have a question.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mimi. This question I think probably is mostly addressed to Professors Crossley and Pearson Brown. I'm interested in intellectual property law, and I was just at the alumni panel just about a half an hour or so ago, and somebody had mentioned they work for UPMC in-house and they know intellectual property lawyers at UPMC. So my question just for you is, I don't know that much about IP and health. So do you know, or, do either of you know of any classes or any resources for somebody who wants to learn more about IP in the healthcare field?
So I would suggest, I'll go ahead and kick it off and Professor Pearson Brown can jump in if she wants. I would suggest looking at some of our classes that really look at some of the overlap between IP and health. So for example, we have a class on biotechnology and law. We have a class on FDA law and policy. We also have a class called commercializing new, I've forgotten the last word in the class, but it's basically a class for representing startups that are commercializing new types of products. So those are all classes that would be of interest either for people who are going an IP route or for people who are going the health law route, but particularly for people who are interested in the intersection. So for example, the faculty member who teaches the law and biotech class is actually one of our graduates who also has a PhD in one of the hard sciences. So he's able to really integrate those two domains of knowledge.
Yeah, and I really don't have anything to add to what Professor Crossley has said, other than just to reach out to Professor Mike Madison, who does a lot of work in the IP space, and be thoughtful about, Pitt has this unique connection to the School of Business, Pitt School of Computer Science, right? So there are other schools within the university that are working on some of these issues. So you might find kindred spirits or people that are interested in some of that collaborative work, even beyond the walls of the law school. So that might help you to segue into the kind of opportunities that you're looking for professionally.
Yeah, I'll also just add, that made me think of, there's an opportunity that a law student has taken advantage of in the past. It's called the Coulter Fellowship, and it actually is at the School of Engineering. And they put together teams of students to work on a problem. And so, while it's primarily engineering, they have drawn students in the past from the law school who are interested in IP, who might have some interest, particularly in bioengineering. So again, building on the idea that this is a great place if you're looking for those types of opportunities to connect your legal training with other professional students, that would be another opportunity that might be a good fit for you, Alex.
Thank you both.
Thank you. It looks like we're closing in on our time, but if there's any last questions, we could take one more question before we take our break. And then the next session is the student ambassadors. Any last questions? If not, I am going to allow
Mandy
the
put her hand up. Danielle has a question.
Mandy put her hand
sorry.
up too.
Hi, sorry. I'm not sure who to direct this to, but I'm interested in criminal law, but I'm also interested in public interest work and advocacy. And I'm wondering if there's courses, particularly in relation to reproductive justice and gender and sexuality as it relates to the law. So I was wondering if there's kind of coursework you can do in those areas.
Yeah, so one of our really great professors, Professor Donnelly, does research and writing in the space of reproductive justice. So I would encourage you to take any seminar that she teaches. She's brilliant and engaging. And so I think you'll find someone to connect with on those issues there. We don't have a core concentration in reproductive justice, but we do typically offer courses that are going to intersect with those areas of interest. So as you look at our course catalog, make note of those and make sure that you take advantage of those opportunities.
One other great course to look at is a course on gender in the law, which is co-taught by full-time faculty member and Associate Dean Debbie Brake, but she teaches it with Sue Fritchie, who is the director of the Women's Law Project office in Pittsburgh. And so that's not purely reproductive justice, but certainly it includes reproductive justice. Sue Fritchie is an amazing dynamic attorney, and I think would be great to be able to take a class from her, as well as Professor Brake.
And then I'll just add one more thing real quick, just on the public interest piece, because I'm so excited that you're interested in public interest law. We have a group of students, which is our public interest law group. They're called PLISIF, and they do a lot of fundraising and work to make sure that students are supported if they choose to work in a nonprofit during their 1L summer or 2L summer. Also, another plug for the clinics, because we are low income serving. If you're interested in public interest law, it's just really good to have that clinical experience on your transcript, because you'll get exposed to what it's like to represent low income families and some of the intersectional issues that they face, in addition to the actual legal work that you've been doing. So if public interest is your focus area, know that there's a student affinity group that's focused on that, and please check out our clinical program so you can get some hands-on experience.
Great, thank you so much.
Mandy, did you have a question?
I was just wondering if there was any study abroad opportunities for health related law or anything like that, or nationally, to go somewhere else like DC and do something within the federal government, or?
Yeah, so I will jump in on that. A fair number of our students will do, Pitt Law has a semester in DC program where you basically can spend the full semester working either in a government office or at a nonprofit for credit. And as part of it, we actually have a faculty member who is based in DC, because Pitt has some actual physical space in DC, and she teaches a public policy course that students who are doing the DC externship can take. That's a great opportunity, particularly for students in health law, but in a wide range of areas. in terms of study abroad, Pitt Law does not have specific study abroad opportunities that it sponsors, but you have the ability to work with our Center for International Legal Education to find the study abroad program that is best for you, that's offered by any school, and then enroll in it and transfer the credits in. There's also the possibility of doing something like an externship with the Pan American Health Organization or other international health-oriented organizations that I think we could help students try to get those externships if they're interested. And some of our students have done that in the past, have worked with international health organizations.
Thank you.
Okay, our next session will start in about 10 minutes. So I want to give the professors a few minutes if they want to give our admitted students a word of advice before we have our little break before our next session. So Professor Harris, would you like to go ahead and start?
Sure. A word of advice, I guess I would say, find the place where you'll be comfortable with your fellow students. You're going to spend a lot of time with them. You are going to learn that you're going to have lasting relationships with these people. So the other people around you make a big difference. And I can also tell you that the advice I gave my own kids when they started college was, don't take classes, take professors, take people you can really learn from. And the unique thing about Pitt Law, from my point of view, and I've taught at a number of different schools as well, is how high the level of teaching is across the faculty. I mean, we just don't have, a group of weak links or people who are just there because they're good researchers or something. You're going to have a good experience, a very solid experience, almost any classroom you walk into. And then when you add Pittsburgh to that, you want to be in a community wherever you end up going, where you can get out and do things that make a difference to you, whether the thing you're interested in is the arts or it's health or it's criminal justice or reproductive justice. There are just such a variety of opportunities here. And those are the three things I would tell you to look for wherever you end up. I mean, obviously, I hope you'll all end up here, but wherever you go, look for the students, look at the faculty and see if you can see yourself in their classes, and look at the landscape around the law school, both the university and the city. So good luck to you all. I'm sure you all have many good choices, but I hope we all see you back here in the fall.
Thank you, Professor Harris. Professor Crossley, would you like to say a few words?
So I'm tempted to say, what he said, because I think that's all great advice. I often tell students, remember, this is 3 years of your life, and you want to be someplace where you're going to like the people you're with, you're going to like the faculty members whose classes you're attending, and you're going to want to like the kind of world that you live in your environment. So I think all three of those are important. Certainly look for, a school that has programs that you're interested in and good job opportunities after school. But I think those are three really important things. The fourth that I would add, and that I think some of us have alluded to before, is that I also think it's useful to think about, what kind of university you want to be in. And I think that Pitt is a university where there's high priority placed on interdisciplinary work, on building bridges between not only the different parts of the university, but also between the university and the surrounding community. So, if you're someone who all you care about is focusing on law books for 3 years and just going to classes and getting your grades, that may not matter. But if you're somebody who actually likes to see how what you're learning connects to the world, or how what law does connects to what other disciplines or professions do, if you like to have a life outside of the classroom and the library, I think that Pitt as a university and Pittsburgh as a city have a whole lot to offer. So good luck with the decision. I hope I'll see some of you in the fall in my torts class.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Go ahead, Professor.
Yeah, so thanks. This is a tough choice, but it's a really exciting choice, right? So don't stress. My word of advice would be to trust your gut. You know, you've been able to make decisions for yourself up until this point. You know the things that you like, that you're excited about, the things that you don't, and just trust that you have an internal sense of, I can identify a program that's going to be what's best for me. So that this doesn't become an onerous process, but you really sort of get to experience the joy of wow, I get to go to law school, right? One thing that I would add to Professor Harris, I love what he said about, you know, don't choose courses, choose professors. And one thing that I would encourage you all to do is to take time to go to the faculty pages of the schools that you're interested and read about what are the faculty studying, like what make the different professors excited, what are they researching, what are they writing, skim some of their law review articles. And if you think to yourself, wow, these are people that I'm really excited to learn from, that should guide your decision. You want to go to a school where you feel inspired by the people that are going to be teaching you, because that's the best way to figure out what your passion is going to be. And if you're surrounded by people that are living their passion, you're going to be in a position where you're going to be able to live your passion as well. So best of luck to all of you in making this really exciting decision. And I hope that you choose to embark on your legal career at Pitt.
Thank you, everybody. We have a short break before we go to the student panel or the ambassador groups. So go ahead and take a short break and we will be back with our Pitt Law ambassadors.
Thank you, guys. Great to meet you.
I think we're all back in the main room. Welcome back. Thank you to all of our Pitt Law ambassadors who joined us this afternoon for breakout rooms. I hope you had some very nice conversations, and I hope everybody had their questions answered. Our Pitt Law ambassadors, I think, as you all have come to realize, they're a huge help with the admissions office. You know, I know some of them have made phone calls to you. They've been in Zoom rooms. They come to our mini Pitt Law previews where we're having students come into our building. They're giving tours. So we really, really appreciate the time that they're giving to you as admitted students. So thank you. Thank you, all of our Pitt Law ambassadors, very much. This next portion of the open house is just, we're just going to close things out. One thing I like to do, I mean, obviously, because we're not giving tours of our building, this is a video that we wanted to show. It's not necessarily of our Pitt Law building, but it just talks about Pittsburgh. It talks about Pitt Law. It's, you know, some of our awesome students who, some of them are already alumni from this video, but I think it'll just give you a nice overview and feel of Pitt Law. So Kim, if you can play the video, and then we'll come back with some final remarks.
To be honest, my perception was a textbook version, and it was just an old, you know, steel mill kind of city. But now it seems like a very vibrant and just up and coming city.
If you want to make things happen, this is the place you want to be. You want to be in Pittsburgh.
I see the future of Pittsburgh as being this great cross section of companies, from some of the oldest companies that have been in the United States to new large upstarts like Google, Uber, or Facebook. And at the same time, with the robust startup and tech community that's here, you have a great need for not just legal professions, but people of a lot of different backgrounds.
Everyone here is so willing to help one another, and there's really a sense of community here.
One of the best things about Pittsburgh is that there's a ton of different neighborhoods that all kind of have their own vibes. Going to school in Oakland is a great resource for students. It's one of the cultural centers of the city. You have the ability to visit the Carnegie Museums right down the street from the law school. You can visit Phipps if you need a chance to relax and really take in some beautiful scenery. It's really a great environment to learn in and live in.
I know I visited countless friends in other cities, and it kind of made me realize how good I really had it here.
Pittsburgh's been ranked as one of the most affordable cities, in some years the most affordable city. That's great for somebody just starting out and living on a budget.
For Pitt students, you can certainly get discounted tickets for a lot of events. And if you like sports, Pittsburgh's a great place to be.
Downtown, we have the Andy Warhol Museum. There's the Mattress Factory, which is a fascinating museum on North Shore.
On a really nice day, one of the best things to do is to take a break in between classes or on the weekends and walk over to Shenley Park, which is right down the street from the Barker Law Building.
There's kayaking that people love to do when it's warm out. There are trails, there are biking trails.
I was extremely surprised by how friendly and accepting all of the professors and students were. There's this idea about law school that it tends to be really competitive and kind of aggressively, scary or nerve-wracking, but at Pitt Law, you really get an opportunity to know your colleagues and the fellow students that you're studying with and respect each other and support each other. And I think that is definitely one of the best things about Pitt Law.
For whatever you want to do, Pitt Law has an avenue that you can explore that. And beyond that, there are staff members who are willing and want to help you succeed.
My experiences in Pittsburgh and my experiences at Pitt Law will always have such a special place in my heart.
You just have to experience it.
Great, thanks, Kim. So at this time, what we'd like to do, excuse me, what we'd like to do is just find out if anybody has any questions for myself, for Mimi, for Allie, for even Kim in IT. We're happy to answer any questions that were not answered for you here today. I still see some of our current students are around. I also noticed that Alex put a message in the chat box regarding the LLM in France. If you have particular questions, he's offering to talk with you. You can email Alex, one of our current students, Pitt Law ambassadors. So does anybody have any questions that they want to ask that was not answered here today? And if so, you can just raise your hand. And if not, we're going to, we'll start with some of our closing remarks. So I think if there's no hands, which I don't see anybody. No, I do see somebody's hand raised, which is great. Sophia, I see that your hand is raised. So please feel free to ask your question.
Yeah, this is just a quick one. I have a question about the public interest scholarship. I applied for that, and I was wondering if you guys know when we will get our responses for that.
Yeah. Yes, and that's a fantastic question. In fact, the scholarship committee was finishing up reviewing the applications this week. So we plan on announcing those winners early next week. My guess would be Monday or Tuesday. Also, too, that's a great question, Sophia, and that will also lead me into, I had some questions about the K&L Gates fellowship. Some of you may have applied for that fellowship, and that has not been announced yet either, but I am aware that the committee has narrowed it down to 3 admitted students. So if you have not heard from K&L Gates at this point, unfortunately, you're not being considered for their scholarship. And again, they'll be making their announcement. I also believe it'll be early next week. So hang in there and thank you for your patience. We do try to get all of our scholarship awards out before April 1st, because we do realize some other law schools have tuition deposits on April 1st. Just a reminder, our tuition deposits is not due until April 15th, although some of you with the blue and gold scholarship may, your deadline is April 1st. But any questions, let us know. If you have a question about your particular situation, let us know. We're happy to work with you too. So thank you, Sophia. You're welcome. Thank you for bringing that up. Any other questions? And if you do have a question, go ahead and raise your hand, but we'll go ahead and start with some closing remarks. And Allie, I was going to ask if you wanted to just say a couple things before we end. And just so you know, we're not ending. There is a short break. And then we're planning on the murder mystery, which is really fun. And I know there's a bunch of you that already signed up. So we're very excited to host the murder mystery party at 4:15. But Allie, if you want to go ahead and say a couple words.
Thanks, Shar. I just wanted to say how lovely it was to get to spend some time with all of you today. It has been, I think, a long day in that we have given you a lot of information. And as you think on that information in the coming days and week, if you need anything or have questions, please feel free to reach out to any of us. We are here to help. The one thing I would say is as you make this decision, and it's an important decision, I encourage you to think about where you feel you belong. And I also encourage you to trust yourself. I would echo some of the sentiments I heard from Professor Harris and Kyle Higgins, which were, you know yourself best, and you want to pick an environment in which you are going to be supported and where you're going to feel comfortable and thrive. And we believe wholeheartedly that you are capable of thriving and doing brilliant things at our law school, which is why we obviously would love to have you. But as you move forward, if you need anything as you're making this decision, please don't hesitate to reach out to us because we are happy to help you on an individual level. And my hope is that I will see you all. I mentioned earlier that open house is one of my favorite events, but my hope is that I will see many of you at orientation in the fall. You may not realize it, but time goes by quickly. And when I watched that video and I saw John Marty and Jesse Exelis and Sarah, I remember when all of those alumni were sitting in your shoes making this important decision. And so I wish you the best of luck as you make this decision, but please remember you're not alone, and it's a very genuine offer that we are here to help.
Thanks, Allie. Mimi, do you have any closing remarks you'd like to share with our group?
Yes. So I'm this. Everybody probably knows me. I'm Mimi Jeffries. I'm the Director of Financial Aid. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what you should be expecting, as we approach April, May, and June, as far as financial aid. I am here to answer your questions. You have my email address. I'll put it in the chat box as well. But you are welcome to reach out to me if you have questions about financial aid, about financing your law degree. I will be in contact with you throughout the spring and throughout the whole summer to walk you through the whole financial aid process of applying for loans and getting billing and getting your refunds. So I will be here for you if you have any questions. Even at, in the next couple of weeks as you make your decision. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Again, I'll put my email address in the chat box so you can, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks, Mimi. Kim, I see you on here. Do you want to say anything?
Sure, I got too many things on my screen. I couldn't find that. So we're always here to help you. I know that a lot of law schools, their IT support isn't always what I would expect the support to be there for students. So, as you're choosing a school, that might be a good question to ask folks at that particular school. We are probably the only school that helps buy your laptop and hand it to you. Some require that you get a laptop, but they may not hand you a laptop. And the reason we do that is because you've already been through undergrad, maybe had some extra, years for a different degree, maybe had extra years for going into the workforce. Your undergrad laptop, even if you come into law school straight from undergrad, is not going to get you through the next 3 years. You are going to type so much that you're going to want a brand new laptop. We think that we have a great working partnership with Apple. We're going to give you a 4-year warranty with the Apple product, and they're going to be there for every step that you have. And really the only thing that breaks down now that we've noticed, unless you dump your coffee or your water, which is also fully covered, really may just be your thumb pad and the keyboard. And because it's a 4-year warranty, we're fully covered for accidental and any of those keyboards or thumb pads that might need replacement. So feel free to ask me for any questions that you might have. I'll put my email in the chat. And don't go crazy buying software, because we'll probably take care of that as well for you. So that's all I got.
Great. Thanks, Kim. Well, and it's always a pleasure to see all of you on Zoom. I know we've met some of you in person at our Pitt Law previews. I'm just going to throw out there that there are still 2 more dates available in April to come visit Pitt Law in person. Those dates are April 5th and April 16th. After that, our building is going to be closed. I think some of you have heard we're closing our building for May and June for some construction and replacement of air filters and handlers in the law school. So I know that as far as the events that we'll have in the building, those will be the last 2 until probably July. Obviously, we're still going to have lots of Zooms for you to join and potentially some outdoor events, small events later on this summer. And so we hope you can come join us at any one of those. And again, thank you for your participation. You guys had wonderful questions and really, it's a nice group of students, and we were so thrilled to have you here today. So we're going to go ahead and put the break, put our break sign on, put some music on, so everybody can just relax, change into comfy clothes, grab a drink if you want, and we're going to start the murder mystery right around 4:15. So if you did RSVP, come on back. And we're excited to have you because it's a fun murder mystery. So thank you all.
RSVP, come back.
Yeah, and if you did an RSVP, I mean, we'll still have we can host as many as you that come back. We'll be fine. So hope to see you. And again, keep in touch with us. Let us know if you have any other questions. And hopefully you'll be here at Pitt in the fall. All right, take care. I'll see you guys in a little bit.